I never thought I'd be that person who causes a scene at a bridal shower, but sometimes life pushes you to your breaking point. My name is Olivia Reynolds, and just 3 weeks ago, I was sitting uncomfortably at my younger sister Madison's lavish bridal shower at Bellini's, the most expensive Italian restaurant in Boston. Everything about the event screamed extravagance, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the 3-tiered champagne fountain bubbling in the corner. The private dining room was decked out in blush pink roses and gold accents, with a professional photographer capturing every moment. I watched as Madison, radiant in her white lace dress, dramatically opened gift after gift from the mountain of expensive packages piled on the gift table. The faces of 50 women, a mix of childhood friends, college sorority sisters, future in-laws and relatives, beamed at her with adoration as she gasped and cooed over each present. I tried to keep my smile in place, but it felt increasingly strained as the afternoon wore on. Then came the moment that would change everything between us. Madison stood up, champagne flute in hand, her diamond engagement ring catching the light as she gestured to the room. "I want to thank everyone for these amazing gifts," she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed room. "But the best gift isn't even here today." She paused dramatically, her eyes finding mine. "My amazing sister is giving us her house as our wedding present. The house is ours now." The room erupted in applause and gasps of admiration. I sat frozen, my champagne glass nearly slipping from my fingers as 50 pairs of eyes turned to me with expressions ranging from awe to envy. My throat closed up, and I managed only a tight smile that I'm sure looked more like a grimace. Ryan's mother, my future sister-in-law, leaned across the table toward me. "Oh my, that's so generous. Where will you live, dear?" she asked, her diamond tennis bracelet clinking against her glass. Before I could answer, Madison jumped in. "Oh, she'll find an apartment or something," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "It's not like she needs all that space, being single and all." Something inside me snapped at that moment. 3 years of saving every penny, working 60-hour weeks, and sacrificing so much to buy my beautiful craftsman home flashed through my mind. "Excuse me," I said quietly, rising from my chair. "I forgot something in my car. I'll be right back." I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, though my hands were shaking. I drove straight home, my home, and went directly to my home office. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out a manila folder, filling it with documents I never thought I'd need to show my own sister. I took a deep breath, staring at my reflection in the hallway mirror. "No more being the doormat," I whispered to myself. 20 minutes later, I walked back into that bridal shower, folder in hand, ready to reclaim what was mine. Madison and I grew up in a modest, split-level home in Lexington, just outside Boston, where the maple trees turned brilliant red every fall and neighbors actually knew each other's names. From the beginning, our dynamic was clear to anyone who spent more than 10 minutes with the Reynolds family. Madison, younger by 3 years, was the pretty one, the social butterfly, the one whose big blue eyes and blonde curls made elderly ladies stop my mother in the grocery store to coo over her. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one, the studious one, the one with straight brown hair and glasses who was frequently introduced as our oldest, rather than by my name. Our parents never explicitly stated that they favored Madison, but their actions spoke volumes. When Madison broke my science fair project the night before the competition, a project I'd spent 3 months perfecting, and that was predicted to win first place, my parents told me, "She didn't mean it, Olivia. Don't make such a big deal. You can always do another project next year." There was no punishment for Madison, not even a timeout. I stayed up all night rebuilding what I could and took 3rd place instead of the anticipated first. That was just one incident of many. By the time I was 14 and Madison was 11, a pattern had firmly established itself. Madison would break, borrow without asking, or claim my possessions as her own, and our parents would minimize her actions while expecting me to be the bigger person and set a good example. My 16th birthday present, a silver bracelet from my grandmother, disappeared from my jewelry box only to reappear on Madison's wrist at a family dinner. When I pointed this out, my mother said, "It looks so pretty on her, don't you think? You can share it." Throughout high school, I focused on academics and worked part-time jobs at the local library and then at a coffee shop, saving money for college. I packed my lunches, bought clothes from thrift stores, and put away every dollar I could. Meanwhile, Madison became the queen bee of her grade, always wearing the latest trends, attending every party, and dating the captain of the football team. Her Sweet 16 party cost more than all my birthday celebrations combined. When college acceptance letters arrived, I had my pick of schools but chose the state university where I'd received a partial scholarship. Even with financial aid, I worked 20 hours a week throughout college to cover my expenses. Madison, however, enrolled in an expensive private college in New York, where she majored in communications and joined the most exclusive sorority on campus. She dropped out after 2 years, claiming the academic environment didn't nurture her creative spirit, having racked up expenses that my parents paid without question. I graduated with my finance degree, landing an entry-level position at an investment firm in Boston. For 6 years, I lived with various roommates in cramped apartments, continuing the frugal lifestyle I'd established in college. I brought lunch to work every day, limited myself to 1 dinner out per month, and tracked every expense in a detailed spreadsheet. Meanwhile, Madison bounced from one half-hearted career attempt to another. First, she opened a boutique that closed within 8 months. Then she declared herself a photographer, only to abandon the expensive camera equipment after a few months. Next came a brief stint as an interior design consultant, which mainly consisted of redecorating our parents' house at their expense. Each venture ended the same way, with our parents bailing her out financially while telling me, "Your sister just hasn't found her passion yet." At 29, after receiving a substantial promotion to senior financial analyst, I finally had enough saved for a down payment on a house. The Boston market was competitive, and I was outbid multiple times, each rejection crushing my spirits temporarily until I found it. A 3-bedroom craftsman with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a backyard with a mature oak tree. It was in a desirable neighborhood with excellent schools, thinking ahead to my future, even though I was single. And I knew the moment I walked through the door that it was meant to be mine. I stretched my budget to the absolute limit, making an offer the same day. When the seller accepted, I cried. The first time I'd allowed myself that release in years. The day I got my keys was the proudest moment of my life. I invited my family for a small celebration, and Madison showed up 3 hours late, making a grand entrance as always. "It's cute," she said, looking around with a slightly wrinkled nose. "But isn't it kind of far from downtown?" Her backhanded compliments continued throughout the evening, but I was too happy to let her dim my joy. A month later, Madison stayed over after a night of bar hopping downtown. She left wet towels on my new hardwood floors, spilled wine on my couch without cleaning it up, and laughed when I asked her to be more careful. "Don't be so uptight, Liv," she said, sprawled across my sofa. "Someday this place will probably be mine anyway when you move out to the suburbs with whatever accountant you end up marrying." I laughed it off at the time, thinking it was just Madison being Madison. I had no idea that she would take that joke and transform it into an expectation that would threaten everything I had worked for. Madison met Ryan Williams at a charity gala our parents had been invited to through a business connection. Ryan came from old Boston money. His family owned a successful commercial real estate company that had been operating for 3 generations. He was handsome in that preppy, polished way, with perfectly styled brown hair and the kind of smile you see in toothpaste commercials. Madison called me at midnight after their first date, breathlessly declaring he was the one. After a whirlwind, 6-month romance, Ryan proposed at sunset on his family's boat in the harbor, with a photographer hidden nearby to capture the moment. A story Madison told repeatedly, each retelling growing more elaborate than the last. I was genuinely happy for my sister when she called me screaming about the 3-carat diamond now, adorning her finger. Despite our complicated relationship, I wanted her to find happiness, and Ryan seemed like a decent guy who adored her. Maybe marriage would give Madison the stability and purpose she'd been lacking. My optimism started to fade when Madison asked me to be her maid of honor, and then immediately informed me that the bridesmaid dresses would cost $400 each, plus we'd need to pay for professional hair and makeup, shoes, and contribute to her bachelorette party in Miami. When I gently mentioned that this seemed expensive, she looked at me as if I'd suggested she get married in a paper bag. It's my wedding, Olivia. Don't be so cheap. It's not like you have other expenses. You already have your house. That comment struck me as odd, but I brushed it aside. The first real warning sign came when Madison asked if she could use my backyard for her engagement photos. Your garden is so perfect, and it would save us having to rent a location, she explained. I agreed, happy to help in a way that didn't involve spending more money I didn't have. When the photographer arrived with Madison and Ryan, they immediately started rearranging my carefully cultivated garden furniture and potted plants without asking. When I objected to them moving my grandmother's antique bench, which was heavy and could damage the legs, Madison pulled me aside. Why are you being so difficult? These photos are going to be in our family forever. The session lasted 4 hours, during which I was relegated to fetching water and snacks, while they trampled my perennial bed and broke a ceramic pot I'd hand-painted. No one offered to help clean up afterward. A week later, Madison suggested using my house for her bridal shower. Your place is so much nicer than Mom and Dad's for hosting, she said, as if doing me a favor by considering it. When I hesitated, pointing out that my house couldn't comfortably accommodate the 50 people on her guest list, she frowned. But it's such a waste with just you living there, she said. All that space for one person. I stood firm, suggesting a restaurant instead, which eventually led to the booking at Bellini's. The next incident occurred when Madison and Ryan came over for dinner one evening. As I was in the kitchen finishing up the meal, I overheard Ryan telling Madison we could knock down that wall between the dining room and the living room to create a great flow for entertaining. When I walked in with the pasta dish, they both looked up guiltily. Just brainstorming some ideas, Madison said lightly. This place has so much potential. Later that night, as they were leaving, Madison casually mentioned that they might crash at my place after their honeymoon. The lease on Ryan's apartment ends that week, and we don't want to rush finding our perfect first home together, she explained. What started as a few days extended to a few weeks until we find our perfect place, in subsequent conversations. I began to feel uneasy, especially when Madison started referring to the guest bedroom as our room when discussing their post-honeymoon stay. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs to find Ryan measuring my living room windows. Just seeing what size curtains would work in here, he said when he noticed my confused expression. Madison thinks the current ones are too stuffy. I found Madison in my kitchen, going through my cabinets. You have so much space you're not using, she said, rearranging my dishes. We could fit all our wedding china in here easily. That was when I finally confronted her directly. Madison, I'm getting the feeling that you and Ryan are planning on moving in here permanently, not just staying for a few weeks. That's not going to work for me. Madison's eyes immediately welled with tears, her standard response whenever challenged. I thought you'd want to help start our marriage right, she said, her voice wobbling. You know how hard it is for young couples in this market. We can't afford a place like this on our own right away. When I pointed out that I had managed it through years of saving and sacrifice, she countered, but you're just one person. We'll be starting a family soon. Don't you want your nieces and nephews to grow up in a nice neighborhood like this? The conversation ended with Madison offering what seemed like a sincere apology. I'm sorry if we overstepped. Wedding planning is just so stressful, and I got carried away thinking about the future. Of course we'll find our own place. I accepted her apology, wanting to believe she understood my boundaries. Later that week, I met my best friend Jenny for coffee and mentioned the strange interactions. Jenny looked concerned. Olivia, it sounds like Madison expects to live in your house permanently. Has she actually said anything specific about finding her own place? When I thought about it, I realized Madison had been vague about their future housing plans. Maybe she's taking advantage of you again, Jenny suggested gently. You know how she is. I dismissed Jenny's concerns, assuring her that Madison wouldn't expect me to give up my home. She knows how hard I worked for this place, I said with more confidence than I felt. There's no way she would expect me to just hand over the keys. How wrong I was. My journey to homeownership began the day I graduated from college with my finance degree in hand and $32,000 in student loan debt weighing on my shoulders. While many of my classmates celebrated by traveling to Europe or moving to exciting downtown apartments, I moved into a rundown 3-bedroom apartment with 2 other girls, taking the smallest bedroom with the window that faced a brick wall to save $75 a month on rent. My first job as a junior financial analyst paid $48,000 a year. Decent for an entry-level position, but barely enough to survive in Boston while tackling my student loans and saving for the future. I created a spreadsheet that tracked every single dollar I earned and spent, color-coded by category, and with formulas that automatically calculated how much closer each deposit brought me to home ownership. My budget was strict to the point of being Spartan: $40 per week for groceries, which meant a lot of rice, beans, and whatever vegetables were on sale. $60 per month for entertainment, which usually meant one dinner out and maybe a movie. $30 per month for clothes, which meant I shopped exclusively at thrift stores or during extreme clearance sales. I meal prepped every Sunday without fail, portioning out lunches and dinners into containers that I stacked neatly in the refrigerator. While coworkers ordered takeout or went out for lunch daily, I ate my homemade salads or soups at my desk, sometimes fighting back envy as the smells of restaurant food wafted through the office. After a year of this regimen, I realized my savings weren't growing fast enough to keep pace with the rapidly increasing Boston housing market. So I took on a second job as a weekend barista at a coffee shop near my apartment, working Saturday and Sunday mornings from 5:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. This meant I had exactly 0 days to sleep in, relax, or socialize like a normal 20-something. The extra income, about $600 a month after taxes, went directly into my house fund. When I hit the 2-year mark at my investment firm, I received a modest promotion and a $5,000 salary increase. Instead of improving my lifestyle, I simply adjusted my spreadsheet and increased my monthly savings target. That same year, my college friends planned a 2-week trip to Italy, something we had always talked about doing together. The cost was $3,200 per person. It took me 3 days of agonizing before I declined, knowing that money would be better used toward my down payment fund. I watched their adventures unfold on social media, telling myself it would be worth it, someday when I had a place of my own. By year 4, I had been promoted again to financial analyst, bringing my salary to $65,000. I also moved to a slightly better apartment with just one roommate, though my rent increased by $200 monthly. I compensated by picking up extra barista shifts during holiday seasons and taking on some freelance bookkeeping for a small local business. I hadn't bought new furniture since college, was still driving the same used Honda I'd purchased during sophomore year, and couldn't remember the last time I'd had a professional haircut rather than trimming it myself. At the 5-year mark, I received the promotion to senior financial analyst that changed everything. My salary jumped to $85,000, and for the first time, my down payment fund began to grow at a pace that made homeownership seem like an achievable goal rather than a distant dream. I scheduled a meeting with a mortgage broker who pre-approved me for a loan up to $400,000. Given the Boston market, I knew this would barely get me a 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood, but it was a start. I began attending open houses every weekend, often rushing from my barista shift, still smelling slightly of coffee, changing clothes in my car before meeting realtors. Over the next 8 months, I viewed more than 40 properties. I made offers on 3 different homes, only to be outbid each time, sometimes by buyers offering cash with no contingencies. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting. The hope when finding a place I could see myself in, the anxiety of waiting after making an offer, and the crushing disappointment when the realtor called with bad news. Then, on a rainy Sunday, when I almost skipped the open house altogether, I found my craftsman. The asking price was $425,000, stretching my budget to the absolute breaking point. The house needed cosmetic updates but had good bones, original hardwood floors under the worn carpet, and architectural details you couldn't find in newer constructions. I submitted an offer that evening at the full asking price, emptying my emergency fund to increase my down payment from 15% to 20% to avoid PMI and make my offer more attractive. When my realtor called 2 days later saying my offer had been accepted, I sobbed in the office bathroom during my lunch break. The inspection revealed minor issues I could address over time, and the closing process proceeded smoothly, if nerve-wrackingly. I signed what felt like thousands of papers, handed over a certified check that represented 6 years of sacrifices, and received the keys to my very own home. That first night in my empty house, I sat on the floor of what would become my living room, eating takeout, a rare splurge, and feeling a sense of accomplishment unlike anything I'd experienced before. The mortgage payment took up nearly 40% of my monthly income, which financial advisors would say is too high, but I made it work. I continued my strict budget, though I did finally quit the barista job to focus on my primary career and to spend weekends fixing up my new home. I painted every room myself, spending evenings and weekends with rollers and brushes. I watched YouTube tutorials and learned how to refinish the hardwood floors, saving thousands by doing it myself despite the back-breaking labor. I fixed a leaky bathroom sink by watching online plumbing videos, proudly texting Jenny photos of me wielding a wrench. Furniture came piece by piece as I could afford it. First a bed frame to get my mattress off the floor, then a used dining table I restored, followed by a sofa I found on clearance. Each addition was carefully considered and budgeted for. The contrast between my approach to finances and Madison's couldn't have been starker. While I was working 60-hour weeks between two jobs, Madison was posting Instagram photos from brunches, shopping sprees, and weekend getaways. When she maxed out her credit cards the first time, my parents paid them off, calling it an early birthday present. When she did it again 18 months later, they covered it once more, explaining that Madison is still finding her financial footing. When Madison wrecked her first car, a high school graduation gift from our parents that was nicer than anything I'd ever owned, they bought her a newer model without hesitation. Her closet was filled with clothes that still had tags attached, shoes she'd worn once or twice, and handbags that cost more than my monthly student loan payment. Sometimes, lying awake at night worrying about my mortgage or unexpected house repairs, I'd question whether I was the irrational one. Was I being obsessively frugal while Madison was living a normal life? Was I denying myself basic pleasures out of some misplaced sense of financial virtue? But then I would walk through my house, and run my hand along the banister I had sanded and revarnished, look at the garden I had planted from seedlings, and know that every sacrifice had been worth it. This was mine, earned through work and determination, not given or taken. It represented not just shelter, but independence, security, and the tangible result of my choices. I could never give that up, not for anyone, and certainly not for a sister who had never understood the value of earning something for herself. 6 months before Madison's wedding date, I came home from work on a Tuesday evening to find her silver BMW in my driveway, alongside a sleek black Audi I didn't recognize. Curious and slightly annoyed at the unannounced visit, I walked into my own home to find Madison, Ryan, and a woman in a crisp pantsuit standing in my living room with fabric swatches and a measuring tape. "Olivia!" Madison exclaimed with forced brightness. "You're home early. This is Vanessa, our interior decorator. We were just discussing some renovation plans for after we move in." I stood frozen in my entryway, still holding my laptop bag and lunch container, trying to process what I'd just heard. "Move in?" I finally managed to ask, looking between the three of them. Vanessa, clearly sensing the tension, took a small step back. Madison laughed, the high, nervous laugh she used when caught in a lie. "Didn't Mom and Dad talk to you about this? We've been discussing it for weeks." Ryan at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, shuffling the fabric samples in his hands. "We thought you were on board," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Madison said your parents suggested it would be the perfect wedding gift." Before I could respond, Madison jumped in again. "It makes perfect sense, Olivia. This neighborhood is so perfect for starting a family, and you're just one person in this big house. You could upgrade to a condo downtown. Isn't that what single-career women want? To be close to restaurants and stuff?" The casual dismissal of both my homeownership and my life choices left me momentarily speechless. "I think I should give you two some privacy," Vanessa said, gathering her binder of samples. "Madison, we can reschedule once things are more settled." After the decorator left, I confronted Madison and Ryan directly. "I never agreed to give you my house. I don't know what gave you that idea, but it's not happening." Madison's eyes immediately filled with tears, her standard tactical response, while Ryan looked genuinely confused. "But your parents said," he began, before Madison cut him off with a sharp look. They left shortly after, Madison huffing that I was being completely unreasonable, and that we would talk about this when you've calmed down. 3 days later, I received a text from my mother inviting me to dinner at my parents' house. "We need to discuss some family matters," she wrote, which immediately put me on edge. When I arrived, I found Madison and Ryan already seated at the dining table with my parents, an elaborate meal laid out that featured all my favorite dishes, my mother's not-so-subtle attempt at buttering me up. We made awkward small talk through the appetizer course before my father cleared his throat during the main course. "Olivia, we wanted to talk to you about your house," he began, using his authoritative voice normally reserved for discussions about investments or car purchases. "Family should help family, and that house is really too big for one person." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Madison and Ryan are starting their life together, and housing costs are so high for young couples these days." I put down my fork, my appetite vanishing. "I saved for years to buy that house. I work hard to pay the mortgage every month. It's mine." "No one's saying it's not," my father replied in a tone that suggested that was exactly what they were saying. "But eventually it all stays in the family anyway, and Madison and Ryan need a good neighborhood for starting a family." "What about me?" I asked, genuinely baffled by their reasoning. "Where am I supposed to live?" My mother reached over to pat my hand. "You could stay in the guest room until you find a new place. There are some lovely apartments near your office." The conversation deteriorated from there. Madison dabbed at non-existent tears while claiming I'd always been the selfish one, despite all evidence to the contrary. Ryan mostly stared at his plate, occasionally nodding when Madison or my parents made a point. My father suggested I was being overly emotional about a material possession, as if my home were a childhood toy I was refusing to share. When my mother mentioned that it would be different if you had a husband or children who needed the space, I'd reached my limit. I stood up, thanked them for dinner, and left without dessert, ignoring my mother's calls to come back and discuss this reasonably. In my car, I called Jenny, so upset I had to pull over because I was shaking too hard to drive. "They want me to give Madison my house as a wedding gift," I told her, still not quite believing the words as I said them. "Your house? The one you've been working toward for your entire adult life? The one you spend every weekend fixing up?" Jenny's outrage validated my own feelings. "That's insane. Please tell me you told them no." "Of course I did. But they made it seem like I'm the unreasonable one for not wanting to hand over my home to my sister." In the days that followed, the situation grew even more surreal. A mutual friend texted to congratulate me on my incredible generosity, mentioning that Madison had told their bridal party about the amazing wedding gift I was giving her. I discovered Instagram posts from Madison's friends talking about helping her redecorate her new house after the wedding, with Madison commenting heart emojis and "can't wait." There were discussions about which bedroom would make the best nursery and plans for converting my home office into a man cave for Ryan. I received calls from relatives I rarely spoke with, praising my selflessness and asking if I needed help finding an apartment. My aunt even offered me her son's old futon until you get settled. The entire extended family somehow knew about this arrangement before I did. I lay awake night after night, questioning if I was being unreasonable. The house did have 3 bedrooms, and I was just one person. Madison and Ryan were planning to start a family soon. Was I being selfish? But then I would remember the 6 years of saving every penny, the weekends and evenings spent working a second job while Madison was out partying, the friends and experiences I'd sacrificed to make this happen. This was my home, my achievement, my security. No one had the right to take that from me, especially not someone who had never understood the concept of earning something through hard work and sacrifice. The week before the bridal shower, I tried multiple times to have a direct conversation with Madison about the situation. Each attempt was deflected with, "I'm too busy with wedding details right now," or, "Can we talk about this after the shower?" "This week is crazy." I realized she was deliberately avoiding the confrontation, perhaps hoping that public pressure would force me to give in. What she didn't understand was that years of being the family doormat had built up a reservoir of resentment in me that was finally reaching its breaking point. By the time the bridal shower arrived, I was mentally prepared for whatever manipulation tactics awaited me. What I wasn't prepared for was the bold public announcement that would force me to take drastic action, The bridal shower was held in Bellini's private dining room, a space usually reserved for Boston's elite, with its crystal chandeliers and panoramic views of the harbor. Walking in felt like entering a magazine spread. Blush pink roses and white hydrangeas adorned every surface. Gold calligraphy place cards marked each seat at the 4 elegantly set tables. A champagne fountain bubbled in the corner, and a professional photographer circulated capturing candid moments of the guests in their Sunday best. The gift table already overflowed with packages wrapped in silver and white paper, many bearing the distinctive packaging of high-end department stores and boutiques. I recognized faces from various phases of Madison's life: her high school, cheerleading squad, college sorority sisters, yoga class friends, and of course, Ryan's family members, all exuding that particular brand of old money confidence that comes from generations of financial security. I took my assigned seat at the family table near the front, alongside my mother, 2 aunts, and Ryan's mother, Catherine, a willowy blonde in her 50s wearing a Chanel suit that probably cost more than 3 of my mortgage payments. Madison floated around the room in a white lace dress that was clearly designer, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured animatedly with her hands. I sipped my champagne slowly, already feeling the beginnings of a tension headache building behind my eyes. Throughout the elaborate 3-course lunch, I couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation from Madison's bridesmaids seated at the next table. "I can't wait to see what you do with the master bedroom," one said. "That bay window is to die for." Another chimed in, "Which room should I stay in when I visit? The blue one or the one with the reading nook?" They were discussing my house, my bedroom, my reading nook, as if my eviction was already a done deal. I gripped my fork so tightly my knuckles turned white, forcing myself to breathe evenly and maintain my composure. Ryan's mother leaned toward me over her untouched salad. "Madison tells me you work in finance." "How interesting," she said, somehow making it sound like I collected garbage for a living. "It must be gratifying to be able to make such a generous gesture for your sister's new beginning." I mumbled something non-committal, desperately searching for a way to change the subject. Before I could, she continued, "Where will you be living afterward? Ryan mentioned you might take a little apartment downtown." The casual dismissal of my displacement made my stomach churn. After the dessert course, individual lemon tarts with edible flowers that no one seemed to actually eat, came the main event, gift opening. Madison sat in a decorated chair at the front of the room, with her maid of honor Kelly beside her to record each gift and giver in an ornate journal. The photographer positioned herself for optimal angles as Madison began the performance of opening each present with exaggerated excitement. Crystal vases, silver serving pieces, Egyptian cotton sheets, and kitchen appliances that would probably never be used emerged from their wrapping to appropriate oohs and ahs from the audience. I watched with growing unease, knowing what was coming, but still hoping somehow I was wrong. Ryan's mother presented Madison with a small envelope, which contained a check for $10,000 toward their honeymoon in the Maldives. The applause was just dying down when Madison stood up, champagne glass in hand, for what everyone assumed would be a thank you speech. "I want to thank everyone for these amazing gifts," she began, her voice carrying across the hushed room. "But the best gift isn't even here today." She paused dramatically, her eyes finding mine. "My amazing sister is giving us her house as our wedding present. The house is ours now." The room erupted in applause and gasps of admiration. I sat frozen, my champagne glass nearly slipping from my fingers as 50 pairs of eyes turned to me with expressions ranging from awe to envy. My throat closed up, and I managed only a tight smile that I'm sure looked more like a grimace. One of Madison's friends called out, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Where will you live, Olivia?" Before I could answer, Madison jumped in. "Oh, she'll find an apartment or something," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "It's not like she needs all that space, being single and all." Something inside me snapped at that moment. 3 years of saving every penny, working 60-hour weeks, and sacrificing so much to buy my beautiful craftsman home flashed through my mind. "Excuse me," I said quietly, rising from my chair. "I forgot something in my car. I'll be right back." I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, though my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my car keys in the parking lot. As I drove the 15 minutes to my house, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my mind racing with all the things I wanted to say but had always held back in the name of family peace. This time would be different. I pulled into my driveway and went straight to my home office, unlocking the filing cabinet where I kept all my important documents. I grabbed a manila folder and filled it with my mortgage statements, property tax bills, the deed to the house with only my name on it, and home insurance documents. As an afterthought, I took out my phone and searched through text messages between Madison and me, finding several where she explicitly referred to it as your house when asking to visit or use the backyard. I took a deep breath, looking around. At my home, the new paint I had meticulously applied myself, the built-in bookshelves I had sanded and refinished over countless weekends, the reading nook where I drank my coffee every morning. This was mine, earned through years of sacrifice while Madison had drifted from one parent-funded venture to another. No more. I drove back to the restaurant, the folder secure on the passenger seat beside me, rehearsing what I would say in my head. I walked back into the bridal shower, where Madison was still opening gifts, her face falling slightly when she saw me return. The folder in my hand must have given her pause because her eyes widened almost imperceptibly before she recovered, her camera-ready smile. I waited quietly at the side of the room until she finished opening the remaining gifts, the anticipation building inside me with each passing minute. When the last thank you note had been dutifully recorded in Kelly's journal, I knew it was time. I walked to the center of the room where Madison sat surrounded by expensive presents and the adoration of her friends and family. "Excuse me," I said, my voice stronger and clearer than I had expected. "I think there's been a misunderstanding that I need to address." Every eye in the room turned to me as I stood before them, manila folder clutched perhaps a bit too tightly in my hands, but my resolve was unshakable. The chattering died down as women sensed the tension crackling in the air. Champagne glasses paused midway to lips, and Madison's smile froze on her face like a glitching video. "I think there's been a misunderstanding I need to clarify," I began, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "Contrary to what's been announced, I have never agreed to give my house as a wedding gift to Madison and Ryan." Madison immediately tried to cut me off, her cheeks flushing pink. "Olivia, you're embarrassing yourself," she hissed, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "We can talk about this later," I continued as if she hadn't spoken, addressing the entire room of suddenly uncomfortable guests. "This confusion seems to have spread, and I think it's important that everyone understands the truth of the situation." I opened the folder deliberately, the rustle of papers sounding unnaturally loud in the now silent room. "This is my mortgage statement, showing that I alone am responsible for the payments on my home." I held up the document so the bank's letterhead and my name were clearly visible. "These are my property tax statements, also in my name only." I laid each document out on the table beside Madison's pile of gifts, the official papers a stark contrast to the frivolous wrapping paper and ribbons. "This is the deed to my house, which, as you can see, has only my name on it." Madison's complexion had gone from pink to white, her freckles standing out starkly against her pale skin. Ryan, who had joined the party for the gift-opening portion, stood near the back of the room, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning comprehension. I pulled out my phone next, opening my text message history. I also have messages from Madison herself referring to it as my house, multiple times. 3 months ago, she texted, "Can we come over to your new place this weekend?" And last month, "Could we use your backyard for some wedding planning?" I looked directly at Madison as I read these messages, watching as she shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her eyes darting around as if seeking an escape route. At no point did I ever offer my home as a gift, suggest that Madison and Ryan should live there permanently or agree to move out. From the corner of my eye, I could see Ryan's mother's perfect eyebrows shoot up toward her hairline, her mouth forming a small O of surprise or perhaps horror. My own mother had a hand pressed to her chest, her face a mask of embarrassment and anger directed at me, not at Madison where it belonged. A wave of whispers began to ripple through the room as guests processed what was happening. Madison told us her parents were giving her the house, I heard one bridesmaid whisper to another. Madison finally found her voice, though it wavered slightly. "Olivia is just confused," she said loudly, attempting to regain control of the situation. We've been discussing this arrangement for months. Mom and Dad agreed it was the perfect solution for everyone. That's not true, I replied calmly. I've repeatedly told you and our parents that I have no intention of giving up my home. The fact that you've been telling people otherwise is deeply concerning. Ryan stepped forward then, his handsome face contorted with confusion and the beginnings of anger. Madison, is this true? You told me your parents were giving us the house as a wedding present. You said Olivia was completely on board. The look that passed between them spoke volumes. Madison's pleading eyes meeting Ryan's increasingly suspicious ones. The carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and everyone in the room could see it happening in real time. I gathered my documents back into the folder, maintaining my composure even as I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I worked for years to afford my home, I said, addressing the room one final time. I never offered it as a gift, and I won't be pressured into giving away something I earned through hard work and sacrifice. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, not the tactical kind she usually deployed. Ryan stood awkwardly to the side, no longer the confident fiancé, but a man questioning what else his bride-to-be might have misrepresented. The photographer had long since lowered her camera, sensing that these were not moments anyone would want preserved. I think I've clarified things, I said quietly, tucking the folder under my arm. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding. With those words, I turned and walked toward the door with as much dignity as I could muster, feeling dozens of eyes tracking my exit. Behind me, I heard the first burst of confused conversation erupt, followed by Madison's sob and Ryan's tense, "We need to talk. Now." As I reached the door, I heard his mother asking sharply, "What else haven't you been truthful about, Madison?" I stepped out into the hallway, taking my first full breath in what felt like hours. The confrontation I had dreaded was over, and though my hands were shaking and my heart was pounding, I felt lighter than I had in months. The truth was finally out, and no matter what happened next, I had stood up for myself at last. Before I could even reach the elevator, the private dining room door burst open behind me, and Madison came rushing out, mascara streaming down her cheeks, her careful bridal shower makeup ruined by very real tears. "How could you?" she shrieked, her voice echoing down the upscale restaurant's hallway. "You've ruined everything!" A moment later, Ryan emerged, his face tight with barely controlled anger. "You told me her parents were giving us the house," he said to Madison, ignoring me completely. "You said it was all arranged." Their private argument was about to become very public as curious diners at nearby tables began to turn and stare. Madison grabbed my arm as I tried to leave. "Fix this, Olivia," she demanded, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Go back in there and tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you changed your mind about the gift." I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. "I can't fix a problem you created, Madison. I never agreed to give you my house. I've been clear about that from the beginning." Ryan ran his hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a way that somehow made him look more human and less like a country club mannequin. "I can't believe this," he muttered. "What else? Have you been making up?" I tried to step away from their escalating couple's quarrel when the dining room door opened again, and our mother emerged, her face a storm cloud of disapproval aimed directly at me. "Olivia Jean Reynolds," she hissed, using my full name as she had when I was a child in trouble. "How could you humiliate your sister like this? On today of all days?" She followed me as I walked toward the parking lot, her heels clicking aggressively on the pavement. "I didn't humiliate Madison," I replied, fishing my car keys from my purse. "Madison humiliated herself by lying to everyone, including her fiancé, about something that was never going to happen." My mother grabbed my wrist, forcing me to stop and face her. "Why are you being so selfish? It's just a house. Madison needs it more than you do. She's starting a family." The casual dismissal of everything I had worked for hit me like a physical blow. "It's not just a house, Mom. It's my home. It represents years of hard work and sacrifice. Why is it always me who has to give things up for Madison?" My mother's expression shifted to one of genuine bewilderment. "We just assumed since you're not married, you don't need that much space," she said, as if this explanation made perfect sense. Madison and Ryan will have children. They need a good neighborhood with good schools. The implications behind her words struck me with sudden clarity. In my family's eyes, my life as a single woman was somehow less valuable, less deserving of space and comfort, less real than Madison's potential future with a husband and children. My worth was diminished by my relationship status, while Madison's was elevated by hers. "I'm going home now," I said quietly, unlocking my car. My home, which I own, and which will remain mine. When I returned to the restaurant to gather my purse, which I had left behind in my haste, I found most of the guests making awkward excuses to leave early. The festive atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by uncomfortable silence punctuated by whispered conversations. Some older relatives gave me disapproving looks, clearly siding with Madison without question. But I noticed others, particularly some of Ryan's family members and a few of Madison's friends who knew me better, giving me subtle nods of understanding or sympathy. Madison and Ryan had left separately, him refusing to drive with her. My parents had followed shortly after, leaving me to face the aftermath alone, or so I thought, until Jenny and my cousin Claire approached me as I grabbed my purse. "Let's get a drink," Jenny suggested, linking her arm through mine. "You look like you could use one." We ended up at a wine bar 2 blocks away, where I finally let my carefully maintained composure crumble. "Did I overreact?" I asked them, twisting my napkin nervously. "Should I have handled it differently?" Claire shook her head emphatically. "Are you kidding? Madison announced to 50 people that you were giving her your house without ever getting your agreement. You had every right to set the record straight." Jenny nodded in agreement. "You didn't cause a scene. You just stated facts. If anyone should be embarrassed, it's Madison for lying and your parents for enabling her." Their validation helped ease the knot of anxiety in my chest. When I finally returned home that evening, I walked through each room slowly, seeing it with new eyes, not just as the house I had worked so hard to buy, but as a symbol of my independence and self-worth that I had nearly allowed my family to take from me. My momentary peace was shattered by the barrage of notifications on my phone, which I had silenced during the drive home. 27 text messages, 14 missed calls, and 9 voicemails awaited my attention. My father's text was a terse demand. "Call us immediately. You need to fix this mess you've created." My mother's voicemail was worse, her voice trembling, with what sounded like genuine distress. "Madison has been crying all night. I've never seen her so upset. How could you do this to your only sister?" Madison's message was the most dramatic. "You've ruined my life and my wedding. Ryan is threatening to call everything off. I hope you're happy now that you've destroyed everything." Surprisingly, there was also a message from Ryan. "Olivia, I want to apologize for the confusion. Madison led me to believe this arrangement was settled. We need to talk when things calm down." I turned off my phone, unable to deal with the onslaught of guilt and manipulation. Jenny came over with a bottle of wine and takeout, sitting with me on my porch swing as the summer evening faded into twilight. "You did the right thing," she repeated whenever I expressed doubt. "You are allowed to have boundaries even with family, especially with family." That night, as I lay in bed in the master bedroom that Madison had already been planning to redecorate, I felt something unfamiliar, a sense of strength and certainty about my right to protect what was mine. For the first time in our relationship, I had refused to be the one who gave in, who stepped aside, who sacrificed for Madison's benefit. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The next morning revealed 27 missed calls and numerous additional text messages, which I chose not to respond to immediately. I needed time to process my own feelings before engaging with my family's drama again. For a week, I maintained my distance, focusing on work and the immediate tasks of daily life. My boss noticed my distraction, but after hearing a brief explanation of family issues, offered unexpected support. Family can be complicated. Take the time you need to sort things out. I was in the middle of a meeting when my parents showed up at my office unannounced, cornering me in the break room during lunch. "This has gone on long enough," my father said, his voice low but intense. "You need to apologize to Madison before the wedding." My mother nodded tearfully. She's devastated, Olivia. The wedding is in 3 weeks, and this cloud is hanging over everything. When I didn't immediately agree, my father's expression hardened. If you can't do this one thing for your sister, then don't bother coming to the wedding. I mean it. They left me standing there, surrounded by curious coworkers pretending not to eavesdrop. My phone pinged with a text from my boss minutes later. Take the afternoon if you need it. Family stuff looks intense. I was grateful for the escape and spent the afternoon walking in the botanical gardens, trying to sort through my conflicting emotions of guilt, anger, and surprising determination. The tension escalated dramatically when Madison and Ryan appeared on my doorstep unannounced on Wednesday evening. I was still in my work clothes, having just arrived home, when the doorbell rang insistently. Opening it revealed Madison, her eyes red-rimmed but her expression determined, and Ryan looking uncomfortable in the fading summer light. "We need to talk," Madison announced, pushing past me into the entryway without waiting for an invitation. Ryan followed more hesitantly, offering an apologetic half-smile. "Can I get you something to drink?" I asked automatically, falling back on manners to navigate the awkward situation. "This isn't a social call," Madison snapped, pacing my living room and glancing around as if seeing it with new eyes, no longer as her future home, but as a battleground. "Ryan and I have been talking, and we need to clear the air before the wedding." Ryan cleared his throat. "First, I want to apologize for the misunderstanding. Madison told me your parents were giving us the house as a wedding gift, and that you were completely on board with the arrangement." Madison shot him a betrayed look. "I might have exaggerated some of the conversations," she admitted reluctantly. "But I just knew once we were married, you'd want to help us get started. That's what family does." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Madison, I've told you repeatedly that I'm not giving you my house. I've been clear about that from the beginning. I'm sorry if you built up expectations based on something that was never going to happen, but that's not my responsibility." Madison's eyes filled with tears, the tactical kind this time. "You've always been so selfish, Olivia. You have this huge house all to yourself while Ryan and I are struggling to find a place we can afford in a decent neighborhood." Ryan shifted, uncomfortably. "To be fair, we're not exactly struggling. My parents offered to help with a down payment." Another betrayed look from Madison silenced him. "The point is," she continued, "this house would be perfect for us. Think about your future nieces and nephews growing up here." "I am thinking about the future," I replied. "My future, in the home I worked incredibly hard to afford. I made countless sacrifices to buy this place, Madison. Sacrifices you've never had to make because our parents have always cushioned your falls." Madison's expression hardened. "So you're punishing me because Mom and Dad helped me out? That's not my fault." "I'm not punishing you. I'm simply not giving you my house. There's a difference." Ryan, who had been quiet for most of the exchange, finally spoke up. "What if we compromised? Maybe we could share the house temporarily, just until we find our own place?" I shook my head. "That's not going to work either. I'm not interested in being your roommate or having my home turned into a way station until you find something better." Madison's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. You're choosing a building over your relationship with your family. If you don't help us with this, you're forcing everyone to choose sides." The threat hung in the air between us. "If that's how you want to frame it, I can't stop you," I said quietly. "But I won't be manipulated or guilted into giving up something that means so much to me." "Come on, Madison," Ryan said, taking her arm gently. "We should go. This isn't productive." As they turned to leave, Ryan paused on the porch. "I'm sorry about all this," he said quietly. "I really thought this was all arranged. I wouldn't have gone along with it otherwise." I nodded, appreciating his honesty if nothing else. After they left, I received a scathing text from Kelly, Madison's maid of honor. "Hope you're happy. You've totally ruined what should be the happiest time of your sister's life. The whole bridal party thinks you're incredibly selfish." The following day brought a call from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, attempting to mediate the situation. "I understand your position, Olivia," she said, her voice gentle but probing. "But is there any compromise you could consider? Maybe letting them stay with you for a few months after the wedding?" Even my usually supportive aunt was suggesting I should give ground. Would you ask Madison to give up her home if the situation were reversed? I asked. Her telling silence was answer enough. As the wedding drew closer, the pressure intensified. My father called a family meeting at my parents' house, ostensibly to clear the air, but really to present a united front against me. I arrived to find not just my immediate family, but several aunts, uncles, and my grandfather as well. It felt like an intervention, with me cast in the role of problem child. For 2 hours, I weathered a storm of emotional appeals, guilt trips, and outright manipulation. My grandfather suggested I think about your parents' reputation in the community if family discord overshadowed the wedding. An uncle pointed out that property is just material. Family is forever. Through it all, Madison sat quietly, allowing others to fight her battle, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue when attention turned her way. My cousins were divided, the older ones siding with my parents out of ingrained respect for authority, while a few of the younger ones caught my eye with looks of sympathy or silent support. The breaking point came when Madison finally spoke, her voice quavering with emotion that seemed genuine for once. The truth is, Olivia has always been jealous of my happiness. She can't stand that I found someone who loves me and wants to build a life with me. She's using this house situation to punish me for having what she doesn't. The accusation was so fundamentally unfair, so blatantly designed to cast me as the bitter spinster, that something inside me snapped. I stood up, feeling strangely calm despite the tension crackling in the room. "That's enough," I said, my voice steady and clear. For my entire life, I've been expected to give way for Madison, to share my toys, to accept when she broke my things, to understand when she took what was mine. I've been the responsible one, the one who worked hard while Madison was given everything. I've been patient and forgiving, even when it wasn't deserved. But this ends now. I looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. My house represents years of sacrifice and hard work. It's not just a building, it's a symbol of my independence and self-worth. The fact that none of you can understand or respect that says more about you than it does about me. My mother tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. I love my family, but love shouldn't require me to diminish myself or give up things that matter to me. If you can't accept my reasonable boundaries, that's your choice. But I won't be attending a wedding where the bride has lied about me and where my own family has tried to pressure me into giving up my home. The silence that followed was deafening. My father was the first to speak, his voice tight with suppressed anger. If that's your final word on the matter, then perhaps it's best if you don't attend the wedding after all. I nodded, surprising myself with my lack of emotion at what should have been a devastating statement. I think that's wise. I'll send Madison and Ryan a gift and my best wishes, but I won't be there. I gathered my purse and car keys, ignoring my mother's tearful protests and Madison's stunned expression. As I walked to the door, my cousin Jamie followed me out. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think you're right to stand your ground. A lot of us do." His support meant more than he could know. That evening, I sent Madison a carefully worded email confirming my decision not to attend the wedding. I expressed hope that someday we might rebuild our relationship on more equal footing, but made it clear that any discussion of my house was permanently off the table. I ended by wishing her and Ryan happiness in their marriage and future home, wherever that might be. I temporarily blocked most of my family members' numbers, needing space from the constant barrage of guilt and manipulation. The night before the wedding, I received an unexpected call from Ryan. "I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing," he confessed, his voice strained. "This whole situation has shown me sides of Madison I didn't know existed. The way she lied about the house, the way she manipulated everyone. I'm having serious doubts. I was careful not to influence his decision. Only you can decide what's right for you, Ryan. I can't tell you what to do." "I know," he sighed. I thought you should know that I understand why you stood your ground. I respect it, actually." After we hung up, I wondered if the wedding would proceed as planned. A text from my cousin Claire the next morning confirmed that it had, though she described the atmosphere as tense and noted that Ryan Looks like he's attending his own funeral rather than his wedding. On Madison's wedding day, I woke up early, packed a small overnight bag, and drove 2 hours north to a coastal town I'd always wanted to visit, but had never made time for. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of delaying personal pleasures, to save money, I was finally taking a spontaneous trip just for myself. The quaint New England town with its lighthouse, art galleries, and seafood restaurants provided the perfect backdrop for reflection. I spent the day walking along the beach, browsing in bookstores, and treating myself to a nice dinner alone. Something that would have terrified me a year earlier, but now felt empowering. I deliberately avoided checking social media, knowing it would be flooded with wedding photos and commentary. Only when I returned to my charming bed and breakfast in the evening did I allow myself a quick glance at Instagram. The carefully curated photos showed Madison looking beautiful in her designer gown, my parents beaming proudly, and Ryan smiling in a way that didn't quite reach his eyes. I put my phone away, deciding that whatever happened next would unfold in its own time. The days following the wedding brought a surprising lull in family communications. The angry texts and voicemails dwindled, as if my absence from the wedding had closed a chapter. My cousin Jamie stopped by with coffee one afternoon, offering insights from the family grapevine. "You'd be surprised," he said, sitting on my porch. Swing. "A lot of the family actually respects what you did. No one says it directly to your parents, of course, but there were plenty of conversations after you left that night." "Really?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "I thought everyone had sided with Madison." Jamie shook his head. "Aunt Carol actually said something about how it was about time someone stood up to the Madison show. And Uncle Robert mentioned that you'd always been the responsible one who never asked for anything. People notice these things, even if they don't say them out loud." This unexpected support helped ease the ache of family rejection I'd been carrying. 3 weeks after the wedding, my father reached out with a tentative text. "Would you be willing?" "To meet for coffee," I agreed, choosing a neutral cafe halfway between our homes. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began after we'd settled with our drinks. "About always being expected to give way for Madison." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "There might be some truth to that," he admitted, staring into his coffee. "Your mother and I may have had different expectations for you girls. Madison always seemed to need more help, more guidance. You were so self-sufficient from an early age. That doesn't mean I didn't need support, too," I said quietly, "or recognition for my accomplishments." He nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to see that. I can't promise things will change overnight, but I want to try to understand your perspective better." It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. We agreed to meet again the following week, establishing a new, more adult relationship that acknowledged my boundaries. My mother was slower to come around, still deeply loyal to Madison and hurt by what she saw as my betrayal of family unity. Through family channels, I heard that Madison and Ryan had cut their 2-week Maldives honeymoon short after a series of arguments. They were staying temporarily in Ryan's apartment while house hunting, a process that was apparently causing additional strain as they discovered their widely different expectations and financial priorities. Nearly 3 months after the wedding, Madison appeared at my door one Sunday afternoon. She looked different, less polished, with minimal makeup and her hair in a simple ponytail. "Can I come in?" she asked, her usual confidence noticeably absent. We sat awkwardly in my living room, the space between us filled with months of unspoken tension. "Ryan and I are having problems," she finally said, picking at a thread on her sleeve. "He's talking about an annulment." I wasn't entirely surprised, but kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that. Part of it is the house thing," she continued. "He says he can't trust me because I lied, and maybe I did get carried away with the idea that we'd live here." It was as close to an admission of wrongdoing as Madison had ever come. "I might have been wrong," she added reluctantly. "Not about everything, but about the house. I shouldn't have announced it at the shower without talking to you first." It wasn't a full apology, but from Madison, it was significant. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means a lot." We talked for Another hour, carefully navigating around old hurts while finding small patches of common ground. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful hugging, but there was a tentative opening, a possibility that our relationship might evolve into something healthier, built on mutual respect rather than established patterns of taking and giving in. As Madison was leaving, she paused in the doorway. "Your house really is beautiful, Olivia. You did a good job with it." Simple words, but they acknowledged my effort and achievement in a way my family rarely had. In the months that followed, I found myself redefining what family meant to me. I strengthened friendships with people who respected my boundaries and valued me for who I was. Jenny and I started a Sunday dinner tradition, rotating between our homes and inviting others who, for various reasons, found themselves creating chosen families. I received a significant promotion at work, vindicating my focus on professional development even when my personal life had been in turmoil. I began dating someone I met through a professional networking event, a relationship built on mutual respect and clear communication that felt refreshingly different from my family dynamics. I also reclaimed my house in small, symbolic ways. I repainted the guest room that Madison had already been calling our room, in a bold teal color I loved, but she would have hated. I rearranged furniture to better suit my needs rather than considering how a hypothetical family might use the space. I planted perennials in the garden, investing in the long-term beauty of a home I now felt secure would remain mine. 6 months after the bridal shower confrontation, I hosted a dinner party for my chosen family, friends, supportive cousins, and a few co-workers who had become important to me. As we sat around my dining table, enjoying good food and conversation, Jenny raised her glass in a toast. "To Olivia, who taught us all that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary." Later, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jenny asked, "Looking back, would you have done anything differently?" I thought about it for a long moment. I wish I had established boundaries earlier instead of letting resentment build, up until I exploded. But I don't regret standing my ground when it mattered most. The most important lesson I had learned through this ordeal wasn't about property rights or family dynamics, but about my own worth. For too long, I had accepted others' valuation of me as the practical one, the responsible one, the one who would always sacrifice her own needs. Learning to define my own worth had been painful, but transformative. As the evening wound down, and I looked around at the people who truly saw and valued me, I felt a profound sense of peace. My home was more than just the house I had worked so hard to buy. It was the life I was building, the boundaries I was establishing, and the self-respect I had finally claimed as my own. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure or establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight with the people closest to us, but they can also lead to the most important growth. Thank you for listening to my story today. If it resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even when it's difficult. Remember, true family, whether blood or chosen, should lift you up, not tear you down. I never thought I'd be sitting here with my finger hovering over the keyboard, contemplating whether to hit cancel on my sister's tuition payment. My name is Eliza Mitchell, and at 28, I've been more of a mother than a sister to Amber for the past decade. We used to be inseparable, sharing not just our bedroom with its faded floral wallpaper and creaky bunk beds, but every secret, every dream, every heartbreak. I protected her from playground bullies, helped her with science projects, and held her when our parents screamed at each other through paper-thin walls. After Mom died, I became Amber's everything, her supporter, her confidant, her financial backbone. That's why I'm staring at this payment screen, heart racing, palms sweating, as her words echo in my mind. It started with a simple phone call an hour ago. Amber was bubbling with excitement about some fancy dinner at her boyfriend, Blake Harrington's family estate. Blake comes from old money, the kind with vacation homes in the Hamptons and private jets. When I asked if I could join, thinking it might be nice to finally meet his parents properly, there was this uncomfortable pause on the line. "It's just a small dinner," Amber said, her voice suddenly cold and distant. "You wouldn't fit in." You wouldn't fit in. 5 words that sliced through years of sacrifice and devotion. 5 words that made me question everything. As the cursor blinks next to the confirm payment button, I feel something shifting inside me, a lifetime of putting Amber first suddenly colliding with the realization that maybe, just maybe, I deserve better than this. We grew up in a solidly middle-class neighborhood in suburban Michigan. Not rich, but comfortable enough until Dad walked out when I was 14 and Amber was only 8. Mom did her best, working as a school secretary during the day and waitressing 3 nights a week. But the financial strain showed in the growing collection of past due notices she thought we didn't see, and the way she'd stare at the grocery store calculator while we shopped. I started babysitting Amber after school, making sure she did her homework, and had dinner ready when Mom dragged herself home with swollen feet and dark circles under her eyes. By 16, I was working weekends at the mall while my friends were at football games and parties. "You're such a good big sister," Mom would say, squeezing my shoulder with pride. But it wasn't always easy sacrificing my own childhood to partially parent Amber. 5 years ago, everything changed again when Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. I'd just landed my first real job in HR at a local manufacturing company, and suddenly found myself juggling work, hospital visits, and making sure Amber stayed focused on her college applications despite the chaos. Mom fought hard, but the cancer was relentless, taking her from us 3 years ago during Amber's freshman year at university. Her last coherent words to me were a whispered plea, "Promise you'll take care of your sister, Liza." And I did, throwing myself into the role of Amber's guardian at 25 while my own friends were enjoying carefree lives, weekend getaways, and growing careers. I reworked my entire budget, downsizing to a 1-bedroom apartment where I sleep on the pull-out couch whenever Amber visits from school. I set aside my plans for grad school, canceled my dating app subscriptions, and learned to stretch every dollar, all to make sure Amber could stay at her prestigious university without the crushing student loan debt I knew Mom would have hated to see her take on. Every month, I meticulously track expenses: rent, utilities, groceries, health insurance, and the biggest item, Amber's tuition payment. No vacations, no new car to replace my 15-year-old Honda with its perpetual check engine light, no retirement contributions beyond the minimum for my employer match. It seemed worth it, though, watching Amber thrive academically, making the dean's list consistently since freshman year. Then Blake Harrington entered the picture during her junior year, charming, polished, from a family with a wing named after them at the university library. I remember meeting him briefly when I visited campus last fall. He seemed nice enough, if a little formal, addressing me as Ms. Mitchell, and complimenting how well I'd managed Amber's upbringing under difficult circumstances, as though her success was surprising given our background. Since then, I've watched subtle changes in my sister: designer clothes replacing her thrift store finds, new speech patterns peppered with summer in the vineyard and winter in Aspen references, and an increasing tendency to cancel our sisterly FaceTime sessions. I told myself she was just growing up, finding her place, expanding her horizons beyond our modest upbringing, but deep down, a nagging voice wondered if something else was happening. The first real red flag appeared 6 months ago when Amber canceled our traditional monthly sisters' dinner at the last minute. We'd been meeting religiously on the first Friday of every month since she started college. Nothing fancy, just burgers at our favorite local diner or occasionally splurging on sushi. Her text came just as I was leaving work early to prepare. "Rain check. Blake's parents invited me to their country club. Can't pass it up." I swallowed my disappointment and sent back a cheerful, "No problem, have fun," with too many exclamation points hiding my hurt. When we finally rescheduled 2 weeks later, Amber could talk about nothing else but the Harrington family's wealth, their fleet of luxury cars, their connections to state senators, the summer home in Newport. "His mom has the most amazing jewelry collection, Liza. Real diamonds, not like those cubic zirconia studs you wear." The comment stung, but I laughed it off. The following month, we planned a shopping trip to the outlet mall, something we'd enjoyed since her high school days. As we browsed through clearance racks, Amber kept wrinkling her nose. "Don't you think this is all kind of cheap?" she asked, fingering a perfectly nice blouse I was considering. "Blake says quality investment pieces are better than disposable fashion." I put the blouse back, suddenly self-conscious about my own outlet mall wardrobe. Later that week, Amber called asking for an extra $800. Textbooks were more expensive than I thought, she explained, and there's this research materials fee for my thesis. I transferred the money immediately, tightening my own budget further by canceling my gym membership and cutting my grocery spending. 3 days later, Amber posted a photo on Instagram proudly displaying a new Gucci crossbody purse, one I recognized from browsing their website and drooling over until I saw the price tag. "Early birthday gift from me to me," the caption read. When I called her about it, her voice trembled with tears. "I just wanted something nice for once in my life, Liza. Blake's friends all have designer everything, and I'm tired of feeling like the charity case." I quickly forgave her, blaming Blake's world for corrupting her values rather than confronting the growing evidence of her changing character. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time since high school. "I'm worried about Amber. She's becoming someone I don't recognize. But what can I do?" I promised Mom. "Family is family." I closed the journal and gazed at the photo on my nightstand. Mom holding both of us at my high school graduation, her arms protectively around us, her smile proud despite the visible exhaustion of early cancer treatments. "Always take care of your sister," I whispered to myself, a mantra that had guided every decision since her death. Thanksgiving arrived with crisp air and pumpkin spice everything, always a bittersweet holiday since Mom passed. I spent days planning a special meal for just Amber and me, carefully budgeting for a small turkey and all the traditional sides. The night before, my phone pinged with a text from Amber. "Change of plans. Blake's family invited me to their cabin in Aspen for Thanksgiving weekend. Private chef, real crystal, the works. You don't mind spending one holiday alone, right? You're always so independent." I stared at my counter full of groceries, fought back tears, and replied, "No problem. Have an amazing time, take lots of pics." I spent Thanksgiving Day alone watching holiday movies, sent Amber a cheerful text pretending I was having dinner with coworkers, and froze most of the food in single-serving containers that I'd be eating for weeks. Christmas wasn't much better. Amber did come, but spent most of the day texting Blake and comparing my modest decorations to the stunning 12-foot Fraser fir with antique ornaments at the Harrington estate. Her vocabulary had shifted noticeably. She no longer went swimming, but summered at the yacht club. She didn't talk about saving money, but about investment portfolios. She didn't have friends, but connections. My attempts to discuss her classes or reminisce about childhood memories were met with polite disinterest, or worse, thinly veiled condescension. "Oh, Liza, that's such a basic way of looking at it," she'd say, the slight pause making it clear. Basic wasn't a compliment. When Blake came to pick her up in his Range Rover, he barely stepped inside my apartment. Amber gave a hurried tour, clearly embarrassed by the modest space. "This is cozy," she said, using the realtor's euphemism for tiny. Later that night, I walked past the bedroom to grab a glass of water and overheard Amber on the phone. "My sister just doesn't understand our world, Blake. She's stuck in this small-town mindset. It's sweet but kind of sad, you know?" I froze, glass in hand, as her words sank in. That night, I pulled out my budget spreadsheet, staring at the numbers until they blurred. My savings had dwindled from a healthy emergency fund to barely enough for 2 months of expenses. Amber's tuition, books, housing, and the extras she increasingly requested had drained nearly everything. I briefly considered suggesting she take out partial student loans for her final year, then immediately felt guilty. Mom would have wanted her to graduate debt-free if possible. I closed the laptop and tried to ignore the growing knot in my stomach. The months that followed showed a clear pattern. My calls went to voicemail more often than not. Texts received one-word replies hours later. Invitations were declined with flimsy excuses. When we did connect, Amber seemed distracted, often ending conversations abruptly when Blake or his friends called. My college friend Sarah noticed the change during a rare girls' night at my apartment. "You know she's taking advantage of you, right?" she said bluntly over wine. "When's the last time she even asked how you're doing?" I defended Amber reflexively. "She's just busy with school and new experiences." But privately, Sarah's words resonated with the doubts I'd been suppressing for months. March 15th marked the 2-year anniversary of Mom's death. In our family, anniversaries had always been important. Mom insisted we celebrate not just birthdays but first day of school anniversaries, learning to ride a bike anniversaries, first tooth lost anniversaries. Keeping with that tradition, I planned a special dinner at Rosalita's, Mom's favorite Italian restaurant where the owner still remembered her by name. Gnocchi night? I texted Amber 2 weeks in advance. To remember Mom? She confirmed immediately. Absolutely, wouldn't miss it. I reconfirmed twice more as the date approached, and Amber responded enthusiastically both times. I made reservations, requested Mom's favorite corner table, and even bought a small locket with her picture to give to Amber, stretching my budget yet again, but feeling it was worth it for such an important occasion. On the day itself, I left work early to place flowers at Mom's grave before dinner. My phone buzzed as I was changing for the restaurant. So sorry, Liza, caught some bug that's going around campus. Fever and everything. Can't make it tonight. Rain check? My heart sank, but concern overrode disappointment. Of course, feel better. Take medicine and rest. Call me tomorrow? I went to dinner alone, making awkward conversation with Salvatore, who kept asking where the little one was. I ordered Mom's favorite dishes and raised a silent toast to her memory, the locket box heavy in my purse. Later that night, scrolling through Instagram before bed, my feed showed a newly posted photo. My sister, glass of champagne in hand, laughing, on what appeared to be the deck of a yacht. Perfect sunset cruise with the Harringtons. Blessed are living my best life. The timestamp was just 2 hours ago, right when we should have been sharing tiramisu and memories of Mom. I zoomed in on the image, studying her glowing face, the elegant dress that definitely wasn't nursing a fever attire, Blake's arm casually draped around her waist, his parents beaming beside them. Something cold and hard formed in the pit of my stomach. The next morning, I forwarded the Instagram post to Amber with a single question mark. 3 hours later, she called, her voice casual. Oh, that. Yeah, the Harringtons invited me last minute for this networking thing with some finance people. For Blake. I was feeling better by then, and Mom's gone anyway. It's not like she knows if we have dinner on the exact day. The callousness of her response left me speechless. That's not the point, Amber, I finally managed. You lied to me? You could have just told me about the yacht thing. The argument escalated quickly, with Amber alternating between defensive justifications and tearful apologies. Blake's connections are important for my future, Liza. These people could set me up with internships, jobs. You always said education was about building a better future, right? Isn't that what you want for me? She had twisted my own values against me, making me feel simultaneously hurt and guilty for being hurt. I forgave her again, but something had fundamentally shifted. The incident prompted me to start seeing a therapist, using my company's limited EAP benefit to afford 4 sessions. Dr. Matsui listened to my stories of Amber and gently suggested I needed to establish boundaries. You can love someone without enabling behavior that hurts you, she said. I nodded politely, but thought to myself, she's all the family I have left. Who else does she have if not me? Summer brought unexpected good news when I received a significant promotion at work, senior HR manager with a 15% salary increase. After years of putting career advancement on the back burner to focus on Amber's needs, this recognition felt like validation that I hadn't completely lost myself. I decided to celebrate properly, booking a table at Emilio's, the nicest restaurant in town, and inviting my closest friends and a few colleagues who had supported me. Most importantly, I invited Amber and specifically asked her to bring Blake, hoping for a chance to finally build a relationship with the man who had become such a central figure in my sister's life. We'll definitely be there, Amber promised. Blake's excited to properly meet the famous big sister I'm always talking about. Her words warmed me. Maybe she did still talk about me positively to Blake. I went all out for the evening, spending more than I should have on a new dress, getting my hair professionally styled for the first time in years, and requesting a special table that could accommodate our group of 8. My friends arrived promptly at 7, bringing small gifts and enthusiastic congratulations. We ordered appetizers and drinks, but I asked everyone to wait on main courses until Amber and Blake arrived. By 8:30, with no word from them, I reluctantly suggested everyone order dinner. They're probably just stuck in traffic, I explained, though my sister hadn't responded to any of my texts. At 9:15, just as dessert was being served, Amber and Blake finally appeared. They were clearly intoxicated, giggling and stumbling slightly as the host led them to our table. "So sorry we're late," Amber announced loudly. "We were at this amazing wine tasting at the Hendersons. They just got back from Bordeaux and brought the most incredible vintages." Blake surveyed the restaurant with barely concealed disdain. "This place is quaint," he said, using the same tone Amber had used to describe my apartment. "Very local charm." Throughout the abbreviated meal they deigned to share with us, Blake made subtle jabs about my career choice. "HR is so important, someone has to handle the paperwork, right?" While Amber laughed a bit too loudly at his every comment. When my friend Daniela mentioned my leadership on a company-wide diversity initiative, Amber rolled her eyes. "That's Liza, always the responsible one, so serious about everything." After barely 30 minutes and not even finishing their hastily ordered entrees, Blake checked his watch. "Babe, we should head to the Prestons thing." Amber immediately stood up. "We have another event," she explained without actually apologizing. "Super exclusive, but this was nice. Congrats on the promotion thing, sis." They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and insincere air kisses, leaving me to explain their abrupt departure to my bewildered friends. "Was that really your sister?" my colleague Marcus asked afterward. "She seems so different from you." My oldest friend Jennifer was less diplomatic after a couple of glasses of wine. "Eliza, you need to stop paying that girl's tuition. She's using you while clearly being embarrassed by you." I defended Amber reflexively, citing the stress of finals and Blake's bad influence, but that night, alone in my apartment, I finally allowed myself to really see the pattern. I pulled out all my financial records, calculating exactly how much I had spent on Amber's education, $73,642 over 3 years. Next to that figure, I wrote down what I had postponed. Homeownership, the down payment fund now emptied. The master's degree that would have qualified me for director-level positions. The trip to Thailand Mom and I had always dreamed of taking. Together. For the first time, I truly questioned whether I was helping Amber or enabling her transformation into someone who valued status and connections over basic human decency and family loyalty. I resolved to have a serious conversation with her about my expectations for our relationship moving forward. My 29th birthday approached in early May, and I hoped it might provide a natural opportunity to reconnect with Amber. We'd always made birthdays special, even during the toughest financial times. Mom had insisted on it, saving small amounts all year to ensure we each had a cake and at least one meaningful gift. I hadn't heard much from Amber since the disastrous dinner, but I still held on to hope that our bond could be salvaged. Then, unexpectedly, my phone lit up with her name one Tuesday evening. "Liza, oh my God, the most amazing thing happened." Amber's voice bubbled with excitement. "Blake's parents are having this incredible anniversary dinner next weekend at Cirque. You know, that super exclusive restaurant where you need to know someone who knows someone just to get on the waiting list? They're flying in a chef from France, actual France. And the guest list is insane. The governor might come, and at least 3 Fortune 500 CEOs. Blake says it could be a game changer for my future." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself smiling, relieved to hear genuine happiness in her voice. This seemed like the perfect opening. "That sounds wonderful, Amber. Would it be possible for me to come too? I'd love to meet Blake's family properly, and it would be nice to celebrate my birthday together that weekend." There was a pause, that same uncomfortable silence I'd come to dread. "Oh," she finally said, her voice dropping several degrees in warmth. "It's just a small dinner, Liza. You wouldn't fit in with these people." The words hit me like a physical blow, but Amber continued, seemingly unaware of their impact. "I mean, what would you even talk about with them? These are CEOs and politicians discussing global markets and investment strategies. Blake's mother has very specific standards about who attends their events, and honestly, it would just be awkward. For everyone." Her tone was matter-of-fact, as though explaining something obvious to a child. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, unable to form words as she continued. "It's really for the best. We can do something for your birthday another time. Maybe grab coffee when I'm back in town next month?" I finally managed a quiet, "I see." Amber didn't even notice my distress, launching into detailed deliberations about which designer dress would make the best impression on Blake's mother. As she chattered on about Chanel versus Valentino, my email notification chimed. Tuition. Payment scheduled. Tomorrow appeared on my screen. The automated reminder for the monthly transfer that would empty my account of another $3,300. The juxtaposition of that notification with Amber's casual cruelty created a moment of perfect clarity. I felt something physical. A sensation like glass shattering inside my chest, sharp fragments spreading through my body. I mumbled something about needing to go, barely registering Amber's distracted talk later. I spent the night awake, replaying not just this conversation but years of sacrifice and support. I remembered Mom's voice during one of our last lucid conversations when I was fretting about a work decision. "Love yourself at least as much as you love others, Eliza," she had said, squeezing my hand with what little strength she had left. "Your happiness matters too." I realized with startling clarity that the pattern with Amber would continue indefinitely, unless I did something to break it. As dawn broke, I knew exactly what that something needed to be. I did something I'd never done before, called in sick to work. In 5 years at the company, I'd used exactly 2 sick days, both for taking Amber to college orientation. The HR coordinator sounded shocked to hear from me. "You must really be under the weather, Eliza. Take care of yourself." Take care of yourself. The phrase echoed as I dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, got in my car, and drove to the cemetery where Mom was buried. The spring morning was quietly beautiful. Birds singing as I placed fresh daisies, her favorite, on the simple headstone. "I need your guidance, Mom," I whispered, sitting cross-legged on the grass. "I don't think I'm doing right by Amber anymore, or by you, or by myself." I spent an hour there, talking aloud to Mom about everything that had happened, feeling somehow that she could hear me. I remembered how strong she'd been, working 2 jobs without complaint, always putting us first, but never becoming a doormat. She'd had boundaries and expectations. She'd taught us about consequences and respect. When I finally stood up, brushing grass from my jeans, I felt more certain about what needed to happen. Back home, I spread all my financial documents across the kitchen table. Every tuition payment, every book stipend, every emergency transfer to Amber over the past 3 years. The grand total made me wince. Next, I pulled up my savings account balance. $8,700 left from what had once been $45,000 set aside for my future. My retirement account contributions had been at the bare minimum for employer matching. My credit score was excellent, but only because I'd been fanatically careful about paying bills on time, often at the expense of building any cushion for myself. I called my best friend Sarah during her lunch break. "I need perspective," I told her, explaining Amber's latest comment and the tuition payment looming over me. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Eliza, this isn't just one incident. This is a pattern of systematic disrespect. She's shown you repeatedly that she values status over your relationship." Her voice softened. "Would you advise anyone else to continue in this situation? If a friend came to you with this story, what would you tell them?" I knew the answer immediately but couldn't bring myself to say it. Instead, I called Dr. Matsui and was lucky enough to get a cancellation appointment that afternoon. "What I'm hearing," she said after I recounted everything, "is that you're afraid setting a boundary means breaking your promise to your mother and abandoning your sister." She leaned forward slightly. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is to allow them to experience natural consequences. Your mother wanted both her daughters to thrive, not just one at the expense of the other." On the way home, I stopped at my bank, ostensibly to check on some paperwork, but really to understand my options. The personal banker explained that the automatic tuition payment was scheduled but could be canceled up to 24 hours before processing. "Just log into your account and select Cancel Payment," she explained. "It's a simple process." Nothing about this felt simple. Back at my apartment, I found a travel brochure while searching for some documents. A Bangkok tour package Mom and I had dreamed of taking together when I graduated college. Thailand, she'd always said, where the temples make you believe in something bigger than yourself. Before cancer made international travel impossible, we'd planned it down to the day. I checked current prices on a whim. A 10-day group tour fell within what I had left in savings if I didn't send Amber's tuition payment. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, choosing a dream I'd shared with Mom over continuing to fund Amber's increasingly ungrateful education. I spent hours at my kitchen table, alternating between guilt and a growing sense of self-preservation. Every time I leaned toward canceling the payment, I remembered my promise to Mom. Every time I considered letting it process as usual, I heard, "You wouldn't fit in with these people." As evening fell, I sat at my computer, cursor hovering over the cancel payment button. I thought about all the nights I'd eaten ramen so Amber could have her meal plan upgraded, all the times I'd patched my winter boots with duct tape while transferring money for her essential expenses. Then I remembered Mom again, not her, dying words, but how she'd lived, with dignity, with boundaries, with self-respect. My finger clicked the button before I could second-guess myself again. A confirmation screen appeared. Payment cancellation successful. For the first time in years, I felt something like liberation washing over me. The cancellation confirmation was just the beginning. I spent the next morning on the phone with both my bank and the university financial office, ensuring the payment wouldn't process and understanding the implications. The student will receive a notification of account delinquency, the university representative explained. If the balance isn't resolved within 2 weeks, there may be a hold placed on registration for next semester. I composed a brief, factual email to the financial aid office explaining that I would no longer be making payments and that Amber Mitchell should be informed about options for student loans or payment plans. My hands shook as I typed, but with each action, the certainty grew that I was making the right choice. Next, I researched vacation options, finding a group tour to Thailand specifically designed for solo travelers in their 20s and 30s. Visit the temples of Bangkok, experience authentic Thai cuisine, and form connections with fellow adventurers, the description read. Using a significant portion of my remaining savings, I booked the trip for the following month, coinciding with what would have been my birthday weekend with Amber. The confirmation email arrived with a detailed itinerary, and I felt simultaneous terror and exhilaration. The first major decision I'd made solely for myself in years. The first hint of fallout came 12 hours later when my phone buzzed with Amber's text. "Just got a weird email from the financial office. Something wrong with your payment?" I didn't respond. 3 more texts followed in quick succession, progressing from confusion to concern to mounting panic. By evening, my voicemail was full. "Liza, what's going on? Call me ASAP. The bursar's office says the payment was canceled. Is there a problem with your account? Call me now. They're saying I might have a registration hold." "What the hell, Eliza? Are you seriously doing this?" Blake's number appeared next, a first in our limited relationship. "Eliza, this little tantrum is extremely disappointing. Amber is distraught. Whatever petty jealousy you're harboring needs to be set aside for family obligations." Then came calls from numbers I didn't recognize. One left a voicemail identifying herself as Margaret Harrington, Blake's mother, expressing deep concern about Amber's sudden financial instability. I let them all go to voicemail, taking time to center myself before the inevitable confrontation. It came 3 days later when a sharp knocking at my door announced Amber's arrival. I opened it to find her tear-streaked face, designer sunglasses, pushed up into her carefully styled hair. "What did you do?" she demanded, barging past me into the apartment. "The financial office says I owe $300 immediately or I can't register for fall classes. My graduation is at risk." I took a deep breath, remaining outwardly calm despite my racing heart. "I canceled the payment, Amber. I won't be making any more." "Why?" she practically screamed. "Is this because of what I said about the dinner? Are you that petty?" Her face contorted with a mix of rage and disbelief. "You've ruined everything!" The Harringtons withdrew their dinner invitation when they heard about my financial issues. Blake is reconsidering our entire relationship because his parents are concerned about my stability. She paced frantically, designer boots clicking on my linoleum floor. "How could you do this to me?" "Amber," I said quietly, "I've spent over $70,000 on your education. I've postponed my own goals, emptied my savings, lived in this tiny apartment, all to support you. And in return, you've repeatedly shown that you don't respect me or value our relationship." I listed specific incidents, The missed memorial dinner, the embarrassing behavior at my promotion celebration, the casual cruelty of her comments about me not fitting in with her new social circle. With each example, her expression shifted between defiance and guilt. "That's not fair," she protested weakly. "I've been grateful. She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "Mom would be ashamed of you," she finally said, pulling out the nuclear option. "She wanted you to take care of me." "Mom wanted both of us to thrive," I corrected gently. "She worked herself to exhaustion to give us both opportunities, not for one of us to sacrifice everything for the other. And she certainly never taught us to treat family as disposable once they've served their purpose." I gave her information about the financial aid office, explaining that she qualified for student loans that could cover her remaining education. "Many students graduate with loans, Amber. It's not a tragedy. It might even help you understand the value of what you've been given." She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Through my window, I watched her storm. Toward Blake's idling car, his annoyed expression visible even from a distance. A complex wave of emotions washed over me. Guilt and grief intermingled with a strange sense of relief and resolution. The next morning, I began packing for Thailand, carefully selecting lightweight clothes appropriate for temple visits and coastal explorations. Thailand was everything Mom and I had dreamed it would be, perhaps even more meaningful for having been postponed. The ornate temples of Bangkok gleamed gold in the sunshine, while the serene beaches of Phuket offered perfect sunsets that I captured in photographs to show Mom someday in whatever comes after this life. The group tour introduced me to travelers from around the world, each with their own stories of challenges overcome and lives redirected. I bonded particularly with Elena from Spain, who had left a toxic corporate job to travel for a year, and Michael from Australia, who was rebuilding his life after a difficult divorce. During a visit to a hillside temple, our Thai guide spoke about Buddhist principles of attachment and letting go. "Sometimes the things we cling to most tightly are the things causing our suffering," he explained as we removed our shoes to enter the sacred space. "Freedom comes not from getting what we want, but from releasing what no longer serves our highest good." His words resonated deeply with my situation. 3 weeks into the trip, I received an email from Amber. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." She explained that she'd taken out student loans for her final semester and had secured a part-time job at the campus bookstore. "I never realized how much you were sacrificing," she wrote. "It took losing your support to understand what it meant to stand on my own feet. I'm still figuring things out with Blake. His parents are less interested now that I'm not the charity success story they can brag about at parties. But maybe that's for the best too." I cried in my hotel room that night, not from sadness, but from a complex mix of relief and cautious hope. By the time I returned home, Amber had adjusted to her new financial reality. Our relationship remained fragile, rebuilding in small steps over the following months. To my surprise, Blake stuck around, though the power dynamic had shifted now that Amber was supporting herself. He seemed to respect her more for her independence, something neither of us had anticipated. The most unexpected outcome was the change in my own life. With the burden of Amber's tuition lifted, I enrolled in the graduate program I'd been postponing for years, taking evening classes while continuing my now advancing career. My apartment remained modest, but I started a new savings plan with clear goals for my own future. 6 months after Thailand, Amber suggested dinner, the first time she'd initiated getting together since the confrontation. We met at a middle-tier restaurant, neither fancy nor cheap, a neutral ground that seemed symbolic of our new dynamic. The conversation was initially awkward, stilted with caution on both sides. "I'm sorry I called you petty," she said eventually, pushing food around her plate. "What you did, canceling the payment, it was actually really brave. It forced me to grow up." "I'm sorry it came to that," I responded honestly. "I never wanted to hurt you, Amber. I just couldn't keep sacrificing myself completely." She nodded slowly. "Mom would have understood, you know. She never let Dad walk all over her, even when times were tough. You were actually being more like her than I was." That comment brought tears to my eyes. We've continued rebuilding our relationship, now based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Last week, Amber graduated, walking across the stage with student loan debt, but also with genuine pride in having contributed to her own education. I sat in the audience beside Blake, who has proven more complex than the entitled rich boy I'd initially judged him to be. He whispered, "She's amazing. And so are you, for everything you did for her." Later that evening, Amber and I visited Mom's grave together, placing her favorite daisies and sharing our accomplishments and lessons learned. Standing there, I reflected on the difficult journey that had brought us to this healthier place. I'd learned that true love sometimes means setting boundaries, that sacrifice becomes self-destruction when it lacks reciprocity, and that my mother's wish for me to take care of Amber didn't mean abandoning care for myself. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't holding on, but knowing when to let go. What about you? Have you ever had to make a difficult decision between keeping a promise and protecting your own well-being? Or have you experienced a relationship that required painful boundaries to become healthy again? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, taking care of others should never mean erasing yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to stand firmly in your own worth.
I'm Ella, 23 years old, and I never thought my own mother would betray me twice. When she emptied my college fund, I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school. Just when I got back on my feet, I received bills for loans I never took out. My mom had stolen my identity for my stepsister's education. I was devastated, but when she tried to use me again, I had to make a choice that would change everything. Before I tell you how my own mother betrayed me and what I did when she tried to use me again, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. My childhood before my parents' divorce was filled with laughter and warmth. I remember Sunday picnics at Oakwood Park, where Dad would push me on the swings until my stomach hurt from giggling. Mom would pack these elaborate sandwiches with the crusts cut off, arranged in the shape of flowers. They seemed so in love back then, always holding hands and sharing private jokes. I felt secure in their affection, both for me and for each other. Dad started my college fund the day I was born. He was the first in his family to graduate high school, but financial constraints prevented him from attending college. Education is freedom, Ella, he would tell me while tucking me in at night. I'm making sure nothing stands between you and your dreams. Every birthday and Christmas, he would show me the growing balance, explaining how compound interest worked. It became our little tradition, and I understood early on how important my future education was to him. Everything changed when I turned 13. The arguments started small at first, disagreements about household expenses, different parenting approaches, conflicting work schedules. Then they escalated to slammed doors and nights when Dad slept on the couch. Mom started staying out later, claiming girls' nights that seemed to multiply each week. The divorce papers arrived 6 months after my 13th birthday. Mom cited irreconcilable differences, but neighborhood gossip suggested she had met someone else, that someone was Richard Harrington, CEO of a regional insurance company and recently divorced himself. Mom married him just 4 months after her divorce from Dad was finalized. Richard arrived complete with a daughter, Vanessa, who was 2 years younger than me. From day one, Vanessa made it clear she wasn't interested in having a sister. When I tried to welcome her by offering to share my books and games, she looked at me with contempt and said, "I already have everything I need." Mom transformed after marrying Richard. Her wardrobe shifted from comfortable cotton dresses to designer labels. She joined the country club and began spending hours at exclusive salons. Our previous family traditions disappeared one by one, replaced by lavish parties meant to impress Richard's business associates. When I mentioned our old Sunday picnics, Mom laughed as if I'd suggested something embarrassingly quaint. "We have brunch at the club now, darling. It's much more civilized." The hardest blow came when I was 17. Dad called to tell me he was driving up for my debate tournament, promising to take me for ice cream after, win or lose. He never arrived. The police officer who came to the school told me there had been a head-on collision with a drunk driver. Dad died instantly. I remember standing in the school hallway, still in my debate blazer, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. After Dad's funeral, I learned that Mom had been named executor of his estate, including my college fund. When I asked about it through tears, she patted my hand absently and said, "Don't worry about money at a time like this. We'll sort everything out later." Her eyes were dry, her black dress impeccably pressed. She seemed more concerned with hosting the post-funeral reception properly than with the fact that my father was gone forever. Throughout all these changes, my grandmother, Dad's mom, remained my rock. Grandma Emma lived in a small house across town, and I started spending weekends with her after the divorce. She taught me to bake bread, showed me how to garden, and most importantly, listened when I needed to talk. Education opens doors. She would echo Dad's sentiment. No matter what happens, no one can take your knowledge from you. Taking Grandma's wisdom to heart, I worked weekends and summers throughout high school. I babysat for neighbors, served ice cream at Sprinkles on Main Street, and tutored younger students in math. Every dollar I earned went into a separate savings account I opened when I turned 16. It wasn't much compared to the college fund Dad had built, but it represented my determination and independence. Senior year brought acceptance letters from several universities, including Westlake University. My dream school with an excellent journalism program. I graduated with honors, gave the valedictorian speech, and felt ready to begin the next chapter of my life. Standing in my cap and gown, I thought of Dad and how proud he would have been. I promised myself I would make the most of every opportunity to honor his memory and the sacrifices he had made for me. The summer after graduation passed in a blur of preparation. I created color-coded lists of dorm essentials, researched my professors online, and mapped out potential class schedules. 2 weeks before orientation, I approached Mom about accessing my college fund. We were in the kitchen of her and Richard's sprawling Tudor-style home, the granite countertops gleaming under recessed lighting. "I need to pay the first semester's tuition and housing deposit," I explained, sliding the university's payment schedule across the counter. "Plus, I'll need money for books and supplies." Mom barely glanced at the paper. "Can't this wait? I'm meeting Richard's partners for dinner in an hour." She continued applying mascara using a compact mirror, her focus entirely on her reflection. "The deadline is next week," I persisted. "I just need you to transfer the funds or give me access to the account." She snapped the compact shut. "There are some complications with your father's accounts. The lawyers are still sorting things out. Use your savings for now, and we'll reimburse you later." This pattern continued for days. Each time I brought up the college fund, Mom found a reason to delay or change the subject. After a particularly frustrating conversation where she suggested, "I might take a gap year until things settle," I called Grandma Emma in tears. "Something doesn't feel right," I told her. "She won't give me straight answers about Dad's college fund." Grandma's voice hardened in a way I'd never heard before. "Go to the bank tomorrow. Take your birth certificate and your father's death certificate. As his daughter, you have the right to information about accounts in your name." The next morning, I drove to First National Bank where Dad had opened the college fund 16 years earlier. The financial advisor's expression shifted from professional courtesy to discomfort as she pulled up the account information. "I'm sorry, Miss Campbell," she said, turning the monitor toward me. "The account was emptied approximately 14 months ago. There's a zero balance." The date of the withdrawal was 3 months after Dad's death. My hand started shaking as I asked, "Who made the withdrawal?" "Your mother, as executor of the estate. She had legal authority to manage the account until you turned 18, or began college, whichever came first." I drove straight to Mom and Richard's house, tears blurring the road ahead. Mom was in the backyard, directing landscapers on where to place new statuary around the pool that had been installed the previous spring. "The college fund is empty," I said without preamble. You took it all. When were you planning to tell me? For a moment, Mom looked startled. Then her expression hardened. Not here, she hissed, glancing at the workers. She gripped my elbow and steered me inside to Richard's wood-paneled study. You had no right to go behind my back, she began, but I cut her off. It was my money. Dad saved it for my education. Actually, it was in my name as custodian, she corrected, and we needed it for family expenses. What family expenses? Richard is loaded. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Mom's perfect composure finally cracked. The renovations on this house cost more than expected. And Vanessa's private? School isn't cheap. Richard pays for most things, but I wanted to contribute, to show him I wasn't just after his money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you stole my future to impress your new husband? Don't be so dramatic, Mom scoffed. Richard provides everything we need now, and Vanessa needed better opportunities than that mediocre public school. You're smart, Ella. You can get scholarships. Vanessa needs more support to succeed. The betrayal left me speechless. Dad had worked overtime for years to build that fund. He'd skipped vacations and driven the same old car so that I would have educational opportunities he never had. And Mom had thrown it away on home renovations and my stepsister's private school tuition. I stumbled out of the house in a daze, driving to Grandma Emma's on autopilot. When I told her what happened, her face flushed with anger, but her voice remained steady. Your grandfather left me a small nest egg, she said, leading me to her bedroom where she unlocked a box in her closet. It's not much, just $12,000. I was saving it for emergencies, but your education is more important. I hugged her, overwhelmed by her generosity, but knowing it wouldn't be enough. I can't take your savings, Grandma. Yes, you can, she insisted. Your father would want this. Take it, apply for every scholarship possible, and get student loans for the rest. Don't let her steal your future twice. The next weeks passed in a frantic blur. I applied for emergency financial aid, student loans, and every scholarship I could find. I found a cheaper apartment off campus to share with 3 other students instead of living in the dorms. I secured 2 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a coffee shop near campus and weekend work at the university library. When Mom called, to ask if I'd calmed down and to remind me about Vanessa's birthday dinner, I declined. I'm too busy working to pay for the education that should have been covered by Dad's fund, I told her before hanging up. Her text response came hours later. This attitude isn't helping anyone. We're family, Ella. Act like it. I started university with determined desperation. While other freshmen decorated dorm rooms and attended welcome parties, I calculated budgets and worked extra shifts. The college fund meant for my education was gone, but I refused to let that determine my future. College life quickly settled into an exhausting routine. My alarm blared at 4:30 each morning for my opening shift at Brewed Awakening, the coffee shop 3 blocks from campus. I'd serve espresso to bleary-eyed commuters until 9, then race to my first class still smelling of coffee beans. Afternoons were filled with lectures and study sessions in any free nook I could find. Evenings and weekends meant shifts at the university library or huddling over textbooks I couldn't afford to buy, taking meticulous notes before returning them to the reserve section. Despite my packed schedule, I gradually built connections. My roommate Zoe noticed me falling asleep over my linguistics textbook one night and started leaving containers of homemade curry by my bed. Taylor, a fellow work-study student at the library, created a shared study calendar to maximize our academic efficiency between shifts. Professor Winters from my journalism ethics class pulled me aside after noticing the quality of my work, despite my frequent yawns, offering me a position as research assistant that paid better than my coffee shop job. These people became my surrogate family. We celebrated birthdays with dollar store decorations and homemade cakes. During holidays when returning home wasn't financially feasible, Zoe's parents welcomed me to their Thanksgiving table. When I caught the flu sophomore year, my friends organized a rotation to bring me soup and medicine. Meanwhile, my relationship with Mom dwindled to occasional text messages, usually when she needed something. "Can you drop off Mom's birthday? Gift from both of us?" Or, "Remind me what size you wear, sending Christmas presents." I'd respond politely but briefly, unwilling to pretend our relationship was normal but not ready to sever it completely. From social media, I glimpsed her life, with Richard and Vanessa. Vacation photos from Aspen and the Amalfi Coast, Vanessa's Sweet 16 party with a hired band and professional photographer, Mom at charity galas in designer gowns, her arm linked through Richard's. The contrast between her carefree luxury and my stretched finances couldn't have been starker. Despite these challenges, I thrived academically. My GPA remained solid, and professors began recommending me for competitive internships. During junior year, I secured a position with the city newspaper that offered valuable experience and a modest stipend. For the first time since discovering the empty college fund, I felt like I could breathe without the constant pressure of impending financial doom. During winter break of junior year, I met Jason at a mutual friend's holiday party. He was completing his master's in architecture, with kind eyes that crinkled when he laughed, and a habit of really listening when others spoke. Our first date involved hot chocolate at a local bookstore where we talked until closing time. By spring, we were inseparable. Jason understood my complicated family situation without judgment, offering support without trying to solve everything. "You've built something remarkable on your own," he told me one evening as we reviewed my budget spreadsheet together. "Most people would have given up or become bitter. You just worked harder." My visits to Grandma Emma became more frequent during this time. She'd been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's, and while she maintained her independence, I noticed her hands trembling as she poured tea or buttoned her cardigan. I started driving to her house every other weekend, helping with grocery shopping and house repairs that had become difficult for her aging hands. During these visits, I occasionally ran into Mom, who had taken to stopping by once a month, usually with bags from expensive boutiques to update Grandma's wardrobe with items that were completely impractical for her lifestyle. These encounters were strained, filled with superficial conversation while avoiding any mention of the past. Tension with Vanessa increased during family gatherings I couldn't avoid. Now attending an elite private university on the East Coast, she would make pointed comments about my quaint little state school and how she couldn't imagine working during college. At Thanksgiving dinner at Richard's house, she announced her summer internship at a prestigious marketing firm, adding with a glance my way, "It's unpaid, but Daddy says the connections are worth more than money." Mom constantly compared us in ways designed to highlight Vanessa's privileged opportunities while diminishing my achievements. "Vanessa's going to Europe next semester," she would mention, then add with fake sympathy, "But I'm sure your local internship is providing practical experience." The implied message was clear. Vanessa was moving in elevated circles while I was merely getting by. As graduation approached in my senior year, Mom suddenly renewed her interest in my life. Her texts became more frequent, asking about my plans, and suggesting we spend more time together. After months of minimal contact, the sudden attention felt suspicious, particularly when she invited me to a family dinner to celebrate your upcoming graduation. The invitation arrived via text on a Tuesday afternoon as I was leaving class. "Richard and I would love to host you for dinner this Friday. Vanessa will be home from college too. Time to reconnect before your big day." Something about the timing and wording set off warning bells. Mom had shown little interest in my college journey until now, and suddenly she wanted to celebrate? I accepted with caution, telling Jason about my misgivings. "Want me to come with you?" he offered, but I declined. Whatever was happening, I needed to face it myself. As I drove to their house that Friday evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that this sudden interest in my graduation wasn't about celebrating my achievement, but about something else entirely. 3 days after the awkward family dinner, where Mom had asked pointed questions about my post-graduation plans and income prospects, I received a certified letter. The return address was unfamiliar, National Student Loan Services. Puzzled, I opened it while standing in my apartment's tiny kitchen. Inside was a payment notice for loans totaling $58,000. The borrower name read Ella Campbell. My stomach dropped as I scanned the details. 4 separate loans taken, out over the past 2 years, all allegedly for online courses at Westridge College, an institution I'd never attended. There must be some mistake, I told myself, reaching for my phone. I dialed the customer service number, prepared to sort out the error. The representative asked for verification details, my social security number, date of birth, and mother's maiden name. Then came the bomb. Yes, Ms. Campbell, these are your loans. You enrolled at Westridge College for their business administration program in fall 2020. The loans covered tuition and textbooks. Your first payment of $347 is due next month. My hands shook as I explained I'd never attended Westridge. I've been at Westlake University the entire time. These aren't my loans. The application was submitted with your social security number and includes your electronic signature, the representative explained. If you believe there's fraud involved, you'll need to file a police report. After hanging up, I sat on my kitchen floor, pieces falling into place. The timing matched Vanessa's enrollment in business courses she'd mentioned during holiday gatherings. Mom's evasiveness when I'd asked about Vanessa's college funding. The way Mom had borrowed my laptop during that graduation dinner, claiming she needed to check her email. I called Jason, who came over immediately. Together, we pulled my credit report. What we found turned my shock to horror. Beyond the student loans, there were 3 credit cards in my name with outstanding balances, and a car loan for a vehicle I'd never driven, a red Mazda convertible identical to the one Vanessa had been showing off on Instagram. My credit score, which I'd carefully built despite my financial challenges, had plummeted due to late payments and high balances. The oldest account had been opened shortly after my 21st birthday, when Mom would have had access to my social security card while helping me with tax forms. This is identity theft, Jason said, his voice tight with anger. And it's a felony, even if it's your mother. I confronted Mom the next day, driving to her house unannounced. She answered the door in tennis whites, clearly surprised to see me. Why are there student loans in my name for Vanessa's education? I demanded, following her into the kitchen. And credit cards? And a car loan? Mom glanced around nervously, before her expression settled into practiced innocence. Don't be dramatic, Ella. We're family. We help each other. Richard hit some cash flow problems with his business, and your credit was excellent thanks to those accounts we opened for you. You didn't open accounts for me. You stole my identity. I thrust the credit report toward her. I never authorized any of this. After everything I've done for you, she countered, voice rising. I raised you single-handedly after your father abandoned us. Dad didn't abandon us. You cheated on him. And you stole the money he saved for my education. Our shouting brought Vanessa downstairs. She leaned against the doorframe in designer loungewear, looking annoyed rather than concerned. What's the big deal? She asked with a shrug. Mom said you agreed to help with my education since Richard paid for so much of yours. Richard hasn't paid a cent for my education, I shot back. I've worked multiple jobs and taken out legitimate loans that I'll be paying back myself. Mom stepped between us. Ella's just jealous because she had to attend a state school while you got into Westridge. She's always been resentful of our lifestyle. The gaslighting was so blatant I almost laughed. This isn't about jealousy, it's about fraud. Where's Richard? Does he know what you've done? Richard is in Chicago on business, Mom replied too quickly, and he trusts me to handle family finances. I later learned from Grandma that Richard had indeed been having business troubles with several clients, filing lawsuits against his insurance company. Mom's access to his previous levels of wealth had been curtailed, but she'd been determined to maintain appearances. On Jason's advice, I consulted his friend Alex, a lawyer specializing in identity theft. Alex reviewed my documents with a grim expression. You have two options, he explained. You can file a police report for identity theft, which would likely result in charges against your mother. Or you can accept the debt as yours and try to work out a payment plan. If I don't file a report, I'm responsible for all of it, I asked, stomach churning. Unfortunately, yes. Credit agencies require a police report to remove fraudulent accounts. Without one, they assume you're aware of and responsible for the debt. The decision tormented me. Filing meant potentially sending my own mother to jail. Not filing meant starting my post-graduation life with crippling debt I hadn't incurred and a damaged credit score that would affect everything from apartment applications to job prospects. After 3 sleepless nights, I filed the police report. The detective who took my statement was kind but straightforward. Unfortunately, we see this type of family fraud frequently. People think blood ties make it okay to commit financial crimes. When news of the police report reached Mom's side of the family, the backlash was swift and vicious. My Aunt Lisa, Mom's sister, left scathing voicemails calling me ungrateful and heartless. Cousins I'd barely spoken to in years sent messages saying I was dead to them for turning on family. Even Richard called, attempting to intimidate me into dropping the report with veiled threats about legal consequences of false accusations. Only Grandma Emma stood firmly in my corner. Your mother made her choices, she told me when I broke down crying on her sofa. Now she needs to face the consequences. That's not your burden to carry. The investigation progressed slowly, with detectives gathering bank records and loan applications. Each new discovery revealed the extent of Mom's betrayal, forged signatures, manufactured pay stubs, even a fake email account in my name for correspondence with lenders. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. Through it all, I fought to stay focused on finishing my degree. Final exams, portfolio reviews, and job applications couldn't wait for my personal crisis to resolve. I cried in bathroom stalls between classes, researched identity theft protection during lunch breaks, and fell asleep with legal documents scattered across my bed. But I didn't give up. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. Education is freedom. I was determined not to let Mom steal that freedom twice. The months following graduation should have been filled with celebration and new beginnings. Instead, I navigated a landscape of financial ruin and emotional devastation. Despite my degree in journalism and impressive portfolio, job interviews often ended at the credit check stage. Apartment applications were rejected. Even cell phone contracts required enormous deposits due to my compromised credit score. We'll need 6 months' rent up front plus a $1,000 security deposit, explained the property manager of a modest 1-bedroom apartment, avoiding eye contact as she delivered the news. Your credit history indicates significant risk. Couldn't afford such terms on my entry-level salary at the local newspaper, where I'd finally secured a position after explaining my situation to an editor who took a chance on me. Instead, I continued living with Zoe in our cramped college apartment, grateful she hadn't asked me to leave when the lease renewal came due. Working with credit agencies proved equally frustrating. Despite the police report and mounting evidence of identity theft, removing the fraudulent accounts became a full-time job in itself. Each company required different documentation, multiple phone calls, and endless follow-up. I created a spreadsheet just to track the status of each dispute, color-coding it based on progress. The investigation is ongoing, but these matters take time, Detective Rodriguez would tell me during our bi-weekly check-ins. Financial crimes aren't as straightforward as physical ones. We need to establish intent beyond reasonable doubt. Meanwhile, Mom made sporadic attempts to reconnect, but only when she needed something. Her texts alternated between guilt trips, family should support each other no matter what, and veiled threats. You know this could affect Vanessa's future if it goes on her record. She never acknowledged the damage she'd caused or offered genuine apology. These messages triggered anxiety attacks that left me gasping for breath in supply closets at work or waking from nightmares where I was drowning in paper bills. The betrayal affected every aspect of my life. including my relationship with Jason. You flinch when I reach for the check at dinner, he observed one evening over pizza. And you triple-check the apartment door is locked before you can sleep. I'm scared all the time, I admitted. Not just about money, but about trusting anyone. If my own mother could do this. Jason suggested therapy, even researching counselors who offered sliding scale fees. Initially, I resisted, viewing it as another expense I couldn't afford. But after breaking down in tears when a cashier questioned my ID while using my debit card, I recognized I needed help beyond what friends could provide. Through my employee assistance program, I found a support group specifically for victims of family financial abuse. Meeting others with similar experiences was transformative. There was Diane, whose brother had emptied their parents' retirement accounts, Michael, whose father had taken out business loans in his name, and Sophia, whose aunt had stolen her inheritance through forged documents. The hardest part isn't the money, Sophia shared during one session. It's realizing that someone who claimed to love you saw you as nothing more than a resource to exploit. Through these meetings, I learned practical strategies for recovery. Setting up credit freezes, creating document lockboxes, establishing financial boundaries, and recognizing manipulation tactics. More importantly, I began to understand that my mother's actions reflected her own pathology, not my worth. While rebuilding my financial life, I maintained regular visits to Grandma Emma, whose Parkinson's symptoms were progressively worsening. By fall, her doctor recommended moving to an assisted living facility where she could receive proper care while maintaining some independence. I'll help with the costs, I promised, though my salary barely covered my own expenses. Your father left a small insurance policy, Grandma revealed. It should cover most of the monthly fees. But would you help me sort through what to take? These old eyes can't distinguish what's worth keeping anymore. I spent the next 3 weekends helping Grandma downsize, cataloging precious keepsakes and arranging furniture for her new one-bedroom apartment at Sunset Meadows Assisted Living. Despite living just 15 minutes from the facility, Mom rarely visited, claiming she was too busy with charity committee meetings and social obligations. During one of our sorting sessions, Grandma mentioned offhandedly, "The strangest thing happened last month. I couldn't find my pearl earrings, your grandfather's first anniversary gift to me. I thought perhaps they'd fallen behind the dresser, but my sapphire brooch is missing too." A suspicion formed. When was Mom last here alone? Grandma's expression confirmed my fears before she spoke. She stopped by unexpectedly a few weeks ago, said she wanted to help me organize my jewelry for the move. Further investigation revealed several valuable pieces missing, items with both sentimental and monetary value. When confronted via text, Mom claimed Grandma had gifted them to her, knowing they'd stay in the family. Grandma firmly denied this. The final straw came when I discovered Mom had persuaded Grandma's longtime neighbor to let her into the house while Grandma was at a doctor's appointment. The neighbor mentioned it casually, thinking I knew. Your mother said she needed to pick up some paperwork for the assisted living facility. Such a dedicated daughter handling all those details. Protecting Grandma became my priority. With her permission, I installed a small security camera in her new apartment, disguised as a clock radio. I cataloged her remaining valuables with photographs and descriptions, and I spoke with the facility director about restricting access to approved visitors only. Unfortunately, we see elder financial exploitation frequently, the director confided. You're doing the right thing by being proactive. Despite these challenges, I gradually rebuilt my life. My position at the newspaper stabilized. I started contributing to an emergency fund, even if it was just $20 per paycheck. The credit disputes slowly resolved in my favor, one account at a time. And I learned to recognize the difference between genuine relationships and exploitative ones. A painful but necessary education. By the following spring, I had enough evidence of Mom's ongoing deceptions to present to Detective Rodriguez, including security footage of her searching through Grandma's belongings during visits. The case against her strengthened, though legal proceedings continued at a glacial pace. Through it all, I maintained minimal contact, responding to her messages with brief, factual replies while maintaining firm boundaries. I never imagined she would make another attempt to use me, especially with legal charges pending. But I had underestimated her desperation and her belief that family ties would ultimately outweigh any betrayal. The next phase of her manipulation was already taking shape, though I wouldn't recognize the signs until it was nearly too late. On a rainy Tuesday in October, 18 months after graduation, Mom's name appeared on my phone screen for the first time in weeks. I almost declined the call, but something, curiosity or lingering familial obligation, made me answer. Ella? Her voice sounded different, smaller, less assured. I need to talk to you, it's important. I'm listening, I replied cautiously, stepping away from my desk at the newspaper office into an empty conference room. Richard left me. The words tumbled out between sobs. He's been having an affair with his 28-year-old assistant. He wants a divorce and he's frozen all the accounts. I don't know what to do. Despite everything, a twinge of sympathy surfaced. I'm sorry to hear that. Have you spoken to a lawyer? I can't afford one right now. Richard controlled all the finances. More sobbing. The prenup. It's complicated. I might lose the house. Ella, I know things haven't been good between us, but I've been thinking about everything. I want to make amends, to reconnect. Family is all that matters in the end. There it was, the familiar appeal to family loyalty that preceded every manipulation. Still, the situation seemed genuine. Richard's company had been struggling for years according to local business news, and divorce was certainly plausible. What are your plans? I asked, maintaining emotional distance. That's what I wanted to talk about. I was hoping I could stay with you, just temporarily, until things get sorted out. Her voice brightened with fake cheerfulness. It would give us a chance to rebuild our relationship. I could help with rent once my settlement comes through. Warning bells blared in my mind. Mom, my apartment is tiny, and given our history, living together probably isn't the best idea. But where else can I go? The desperation in her voice seemed authentic. Your Aunt Lisa's house is under renovation, and I can't afford a hotel long-term. Please, Ella, just a month or two. I've changed, I promise. I hedged, promising to think about it without committing. After the call, I texted Jason. Mom just called. Richard's leaving her and she wants to move in with me. Red flags everywhere. His response was immediate. Definitely concerning. Let's talk tonight. Over dinner, Jason helped me process the conversation. Notice how she jumped straight to moving in? Not, can we meet for coffee, or could you help me research apartments? Straight to becoming dependent on you. And suddenly she wants to rebuild our relationship. After months of barely acknowledging the identity theft case, I added, trust your instincts. They've been right about her before. I decided to investigate before responding to Mom's request. First, I called Grandma Emma, who confirmed Richard had indeed moved out weeks ago, though she'd heard rumors about financial troubles rather than an affair. Then I contacted my cousin Beth, who maintained loose connections with Mom's social circle. Aunt Catherine's been telling everyone Richard left her destitute, Beth reported. She's also claiming you invited her to live with you, and how wonderful it is that you've reconciled. Is that true? Absolutely not, I replied, stomach sinking. I just heard from her yesterday, and I haven't agreed to anything. That's what I thought. She told my mom last week that you were setting up your spare bedroom for her. Mom was creating a narrative where I'd already agreed, attempting to use social pressure to force my compliance. The realization strengthened my resolve to maintain boundaries. Before I could call Mom to decline her request, she showed up at my apartment unannounced on Saturday morning. Through the peephole, I saw her standing beside several expensive suitcases. And she wasn't alone. Vanessa slouched against the hallway wall, scrolling through her phone with obvious boredom. When I opened the door, Mom pushed past me with practiced confidence. We made it! The traffic was terrible. Vanessa, bring in the small bags first. Wait, I interjected. What's happening? I never agreed to anyone moving in. Mom waved dismissively. I knew you'd say yes once you understood the situation. Richard's being utterly unreasonable about support payments, and Vanessa had to take a leave of absence from college because of the stress. We just need a place to regroup. Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. Where's my room? This place is smaller than our pool house. The audacity left me momentarily speechless. Mom interpreted my silence as agreement, continuing her takeover. The bedroom is small, but Vanessa can have it. I'll take the sofa. Now, is there a service? Entrance for the rest of our luggage? There is no rest of the luggage, because you're not staying, I finally managed. I never agreed to this arrangement. You can't just show up and expect to move in. Don't be ridiculous. Where else would we go? We're family. Mom's voice hardened. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? Everything you've done for me? You stole my college fund and my identity. Ancient history, she dismissed. I was going through a difficult time. You need to forgive and move forward. While we argued, Vanessa wandered into my bedroom without permission. Your closet is tiny, she called out. I'll need at least half the bathroom cabinet space. The situation was surreal. I texted Jason. SOS, they're here with luggage. Both of them. He responded immediately. On my way. Stay firm. While waiting for Jason, I tried reasoning with Mom. Even if I wanted to help, my lease doesn't allow additional occupants. You'd be violating the terms. We can work around that. Landlords never check. Mom moved toward my kitchen, opening cabinets and frowning at the contents. We'll need to stock better groceries. This processed food won't do. I caught her arm as she reached for another cabinet. Stop acting like you live here. You don't, and you won't. Her expression changed, calculation replacing confidence. Darling, be reasonable. This temporary setback doesn't change who we are. We're still Harringtons. We just need a little help until the divorce settlement. I'm not a Harrington. I'm a Campbell, like Dad. And I've learned the hard way what your little help costs, Vanessa. Emerged from my bedroom holding my favorite sweater. Can I borrow this? Mine got wrinkled in the suitcase. Before I could respond, Jason arrived. His presence provided moral support as I firmly reiterated that neither Mom nor Vanessa would be staying. They argued, cajoled, and eventually threatened legal action for abandoning family in crisis, but finally departed when I mentioned contacting Detective Rodriguez about the ongoing identity theft case. As their taxi pulled away, I overheard a fragment of Mom's phone conversation. Plan B. She's being difficult, but we can still use her improved credit for the apartment application. I'll get her signature somehow. I stood frozen in my doorway, the pieces clicking into place. This wasn't about rebuilding relationships or temporary housing. Mom had been monitoring my credit score, waiting until the identity theft cleanup had improved it enough to exploit again. That evening, as Jason and I processed the encounter, Grandma Emma called with disturbing news. Catherine visited me today, asking about my power of attorney arrangements. She suggested I might simplify things by adding her name to my accounts. When I declined, she mentioned concerns about my cognitive abilities to the facility director. The attempted exploitation extended beyond me to the only other vulnerable family member. Mom was growing desperate, reaching for any financial lifeline as her privileged lifestyle crumbled. Jason squeezed my hand as I ended the call with Grandma. You know she won't stop unless there are consequences she can't charm or manipulate her way out of. What does that even look like? The legal case is moving at a snail's pace. Sometimes the most effective consequence is public truth. Your mother operates on appearances and others' perceptions. That's her vulnerability. Grandma offered similar wisdom during my visit the next day. Love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be used, she said, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged her teacup. Sometimes the most loving thing is establishing consequences. I spent the following days in deep reflection, weighing options and responsibilities. Mom would continue attempting to exploit me and potentially Grandma unless Something fundamentally changed. Legal proceedings might eventually provide official consequences, but Mom's manipulative patterns needed addressing immediately before she caused more damage. The solution came to me gradually. I needed to break the cycle of secrecy and enablement that allowed her behavior to continue. Not through revenge or public humiliation, but through calm, factual exposure of the truth to those who had been manipulated by her narratives. It wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary, not just for my protection, but for her own potential. Growth. With this clarity, I began formulating a plan that would force Mom to confront reality while offering a path toward genuine redemption if she chose to take it. The approach would require courage, evidence, and compassion without compromise. A delicate balance I wasn't sure I could achieve, but knew I needed to attempt. The family gathering took 3 weeks to arrange. I chose Grandma Emma's community room at Sunset Meadows Assisted Living as neutral territory. Comfortable enough for extended conversation, but public enough to discourage dramatic outbursts. Through careful individual conversations, I invited key family members who had been affected by Mom's manipulations. Aunt Lisa, who had been led to believe I'd abandoned Mom in her time of need. Uncle Robert, who had loaned her money based on fabricated emergencies. Cousins who had taken sides without knowing the full story. And even Richard, who agreed to attend after learning about the extent of financial deceptions during their marriage. This isn't an ambush or intervention, I explained to each person individually. It's an opportunity for transparency. I'll be presenting documented evidence of a pattern of behavior that has affected many of us. You deserve to make informed decisions about your relationships going forward. Mom arrived expecting a small gathering where she could continue portraying herself as the victim of Richard's abandonment and my ingratitude. Her confident smile faltered when she saw the assembled family members, with Grandma Emma seated at the center like a family matriarch. "What's this about?" she asked, voice tinged with suspicion as she noted the projector setup and folders on the central table. "Clarity," I answered simply. "Please take a seat. We'll begin shortly." Once everyone was settled, I stood before them, nervous but resolved. "Thank you all for coming. I know Sunday afternoons are precious family time, which is why this conversation matters. For years, many of us have been operating with different versions of the same story, creating divisions and enabling harmful patterns. Today, I'm sharing documented facts so we can all make informed choices moving forward. Using the organizational skills honed through years of journalism work, I presented a clear timeline of events, beginning with Dad's college fund and proceeding through the identity theft, multiple manipulation attempts, and recent exploitation targeting Grandma Emma. For each claim, I provided evidence: bank statements, credit reports, police records, text message screenshots, and security footage from Grandma's apartment showing Mom searching through drawers during visits. "I'm not sharing this to punish or humiliate," I clarified, as Mom attempted to interrupt with accusations of betrayal. "I'm sharing because patterns don't change when they remain hidden. Every person in this room has been told a different story. About me, about Grandma's care, about financial needs and family responsibilities." Mom tried several tactics as the presentation continued, playing victim, deflecting blame, minimizing actions, and attempting to leave when the evidence became overwhelming. Each time, I redirected gently but firmly back to documented facts. "The money wasn't even yours," she finally snapped when cornered about the college fund. "Your father set it up to control me even after the divorce." Grandma Emma spoke then, her voice soft but clear. "My son worked overtime for years to build that fund. He drove the same car for 15 years while you replaced yours every 2. He skipped fishing trips with his brothers to pick up extra shifts. That money represented his love and sacrifice for Ella's future, not control over you, Catherine." As the afternoon progressed, family members began sharing their own experiences. Aunt Lisa described lending Mom $10,000 for emergency medical bills that coincided with a luxury cruise booking that appeared on Facebook. Uncle Robert recalled co-signing for a car loan that damaged his credit when payments were missed. Cousin Beth mentioned jewelry borrowed and never returned. The pattern emerged clearly, not from my narrative, but from the collective experiences of those present. Mom's strategy of isolating her targets, creating different narratives for different people, and using family loyalty to escape consequences became impossible to deny. When the evidence portion concluded, I surprised everyone, perhaps most, of all myself, by offering a path forward rather than simply exposing the past. I haven't arranged this gathering to cut ties, though that would be the easiest solution, I explained, looking directly at Mom, whose makeup had smudged from tearful attempts to garner sympathy. I'm presenting two options for our relationship, moving forward. The first option involved complete estrangement, no contact, legally enforced if necessary through restraining orders and formal complaint processes. The second option required Mom to commit to therapy focusing on financial manipulation patterns, attend financial management counseling, and agree to supervised contact with transparent communication among family members to prevent triangulation. The choice is yours, I concluded. But there will no longer be a third option where manipulation continues without consequences. The room fell silent. Richard was the first to speak, addressing Mom directly. The business troubles I experienced weren't what caused our marriage to fail. It was discovering credit accounts opened in my elderly mother's name from our home computer. I stayed silent to protect everyone's dignity, but that protection has enabled further harm. One by one, family members expressed similar sentiments, not with anger, but with clarity and firm boundaries. The united front proved more effective than any individual confrontation could have been. Mom's initial reaction was predictable, denial followed by victim positioning. But as person after person shared concrete examples of deception, her defenses gradually weakened. By late afternoon, exhaustion replaced performance as she realized the old tactics wouldn't work in this setting. "What do you expect me to do?" she asked finally, voice stripped of its usual polish. "Start over from nothing at my age?" "Not from nothing," I replied. "From truth. It's actually a stronger foundation than appearances." To my surprise, she agreed to the therapy option, though whether from genuine desire for change or simply facing no viable alternative remained unclear. Aunt Lisa volunteered to oversee the follow-through, having experienced similar issues with her own adult son's addiction recovery process. The months that followed brought cautious changes. Mom began therapy with a specialist in narcissistic behavior patterns. She moved into a modest apartment within her actual means. Our contact remained limited but more authentic than it had been in years. I maintained firm boundaries while allowing for the possibility of gradual rebuilding based on consistent behavior rather than promises. My own life stabilized as the identity theft case finally resolved. The credit bureaus removed the fraudulent accounts, though rebuilding my score would take time. I received a promotion at the newspaper and moved to a better apartment. Jason and I discussed future plans with cautious optimism. More importantly, I found purpose in helping others recognize financial abuse through volunteer work at the community center, leading workshops on recognizing manipulation tactics and establishing healthy boundaries. The journalist in me found satisfaction in researching and presenting complex emotional topics in accessible ways. Each person who recognized their own situation in my story and found courage to address it felt like honoring Dad's memory and the values he had tried to instill. True healing wasn't about forgetting or even necessarily forgiving every action, but about finding meaning in the painful experience and preventing similar harm to others. The freedom I discovered wasn't from cutting toxic people out completely, though that remains a valid choice for many, but from establishing unshakable boundaries based on self-worth and truth. The greatest gift I gave myself wasn't cutting toxic people out completely, but learning that I deserve relationships based on respect, not exploitation, I explained to a workshop participant struggling with family financial abuse. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling them and show them the reality they've created. Looking back at the frightened, exhausted college student I had been, working multiple jobs to compensate for a stolen future, I felt compassion rather than just pain. That young woman had discovered her own strength through necessity, building a life on her own terms despite the obstacles. The journey had been brutal at times, but it led to an authentic life built on truth rather than manipulation. The most valuable inheritance my father could have left me. Have you ever had to confront a family member who betrayed your trust? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to see more content about establishing healthy boundaries and recognizing manipulation tactics. And remember, sharing these stories helps others recognize similar patterns in their own lives, so consider passing this along to someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by the boundaries you set and the truth you live.